One second I was on a battlefield firing my gun. The next I got teleported to a tiny floating island. Just 4 by 4 meters of empty space hanging in the sky. A system announcement said all of humanity had been transported to these sky islands, and we each got a fishing rod and one random talent to survive. I bound the island to myself and checked the announcements. We had 7 days of newbie protection, no harsh weather, no monsters invading. After that, disasters would start. We could fish off the edge of our islands to get supplies, but night fishing was extremely dangerous. Losing your island meant losing everything. You'd become a slave or a drifter with no way to get your status back. My stats were slightly above average, nothing special. Then came the talent draw. I pulled something called Farmer, a unique tier talent. At first I thought it was garbage, but reading the details changed my mind completely. First, my very first cast each day would always hook a special employee. Second, any resources I fished up would be doubled, and crops or livestock on my island would grow twice as fast. Third, I could check the loyalty of any creature on my island, and every employee I fished up would be permanently loyal to me. That was insanely strong. Right then, my fishing rod's bell started ringing. Something had bitten. I grabbed the rod tight and started reeling in. Whatever was down there barely struggled at all, but it was heavy. After a while the weight eased up, so I yanked hard, and a golden treasure chest landed right next to me on the island. The golden chest was about 1 meter wide and seriously heavy. It took up a big chunk of my tiny island. I still don't know how I managed to pull it up. It felt impossibly heavy at first, then the weight just disappeared. Probably some newbie protection thing. I opened the lid and found someone curled up inside, wearing black clothes. But it wasn't exactly a human. She had cat ears and a long tail. A cat girl. She opened her green eyes, looked at me cautiously for a second, then relaxed like she understood the situation. She introduced herself as Shina and called me Master. Her stats were insane. Her strength was 29 and agility was 33, way beyond anything I could match. With her around, I felt a lot safer. I asked if she remembered where she came from, but she couldn't recall. She just knew the world was dangerous and promised to protect me. Good enough for now. My fishing rod started ringing again. I pulled up something light this time, a piece of bread and a bottle of water. Thanks to my farmer talent, both doubled automatically. Nice. Then I had an idea. I handed the rod to Shina to test whether resources would still double if someone else did the fishing. My talent description only said I needed to cast the first rod myself for the employee catch. It didn't say anything about needing to personally fish for the resource bonus. Meanwhile, I went back to the empty chest. The system asked if I wanted to break it down, so I did. It turned into 20 pieces of gold, useful for trading, upgrading the island, and building stuff. A welcome bonus. I checked my island panel next. It was level 0, only 16 square meters, with nothing on it. To upgrade, I needed 50 units of soil, 20 stone, and 20 wood. That sounded simple until I remembered I could only get materials by fishing them up one at a time. Terrible odds. At least there was a trading market to fall back on. I opened the regional chat channel and noticed the player count had already dropped from 10,000 to 9,891. Over 100 people dead already, during the safest period possible. I couldn't figure out how. Maybe they accidentally stepped off their islands. Or maybe they just jumped on purpose. Unbelievable. I opened the regional chat channel, and it was chaos. People looking for family, national grudges between players, someone complaining they fished up a smelly sock after hours of trying. Most of the chatter was useless for survival. I had no family to look for anyway. I was an orphan and single before the transfer. One thing I noticed was that almost nobody was sharing their talent details. Smart. In a world like this, keeping your cards hidden made sense. Shina's rod rang, and she yanked up the catch instantly. A gray-brown bag containing 3 units of soil, 2 stone, and 2 wood. She looked disappointed at the small haul, but I told her not to worry. These were exactly what I needed to upgrade the island. When I collected the materials, the system confirmed they doubled, 6 soil, for stone, for wood. So it worked the same way even when Shina did the fishing. As long as I was the one picking up the resources, the doubling kicked in. That gave me an idea. If it didn't matter who held the rod, why not make more fishing rods? I couldn't build anything fancy, but a stick of wood, some string, and an iron hook. That's a rod. Crude, but functional. I just needed the materials. I posted a buying request on the regional channel, looking for rope, fishing line, or iron hooks. My player number was 666, which stood out enough that people actually noticed. A guy named Lin and even said he memorized my request because the number was so cool. Meanwhile, someone in chat said they'd fished up a live tiger. It nearly killed them, but they ducked at the last second and the tiger flew right off the edge of the island. Lucky break, but a waste of all that meat. Messages flooded past so fast that my post got buried almost immediately. But thanks to my memorable number, someone with ID 9999 added me as a friend right away. They had a 3-meter fishing line, green quality with decent toughness. They wanted food or water in exchange. I offered one piece of bread. They asked if I had water too, since water was more valuable than food in this situation. Then they sent over another item's details, offering to bundle both things together for a bread and a bottle of water. The other player offered a flint along with the fishing line. The announcements had warned about cold nights, and having a fire starter would also help cook any raw food I caught later. I agreed to trade half a bottle of water and one bread for both items. The trade went through the market system in seconds. The other player told me they hadn't eaten in 2 days before the transfer because war had hit their hometown. They thanked me, and we parted on good terms. Now I had the fishing line but still needed a hook. Over the next 4 hours, Shina and I kept fishing with the system rod and pulled in a decent haul: water, bread, soil, stone, wood, iron nails, and iron blocks. All the non-living resources doubled when I collected them. Then it hit me: iron nails. Bend one into a hook shape, and it becomes a fish hook. I couldn't do it myself, but Shina's strength was way beyond mine. I handed her a nail, and she bent it into shape easily, copying the curve of the system rod's hook. I tied the bent nail to one end of the fishing line and attached the other into a piece of wood the right size for a rod. It looked rough and ugly, but it was a fishing rod. I threw the line into the clouds and waited. 1 minute, 10 minutes, half an hour, 2 hours, nothing. Shina caught several things on the system rod during that time. I was ready to give up, thinking maybe only proper system-crafted rods worked in this world. Right as I was about to pull it in, I felt a tug. Something bit. This was completely different from the system rod. I could actually feel the struggle through the line. It was shaking hard. But I couldn't pull too aggressively. This was just a wooden stick with string. If I forced it, the whole thing would snap. So I played it slow, keeping the rod upright and letting whatever was down there tire itself out. After about 10 minutes, the struggling weakened, and 5 minutes later it stopped completely. I yanked hard and swung it up. It was an iron treasure chest, about the size of a medical kit. Shina was genuinely amazed that my ugly homemade rod actually caught something. Honestly, I was pretty amazed myself. I checked the chest, and it turned out to be a black iron treasure box, the second tier in the chest ranking system. The system listed 9 levels: wood, black iron, bronze, silver, gold, platinum, jade, diamond, and rainbow. My system rod had pulled a gold chest on my first cast, but that was because of my farmer talent. The fact that this garbage rod I threw together from scraps could pull a black iron chest was exciting. I opened it up and the haul was incredible. Inside sat 20 units of soil, 10 stone, 10 wood, 5 mud, and 2 copies of a basic wooden cabin blueprint. When I collected everything, my farmer talent kicked in and doubled all the resources. So I ended up with 40 soil, 20 stone, 20 wood, 10 mud, and 2 blueprints. Then I put my hands on the empty chest, and the system asked if I wanted to break it down. Of course I did. That gave me another 20 iron blocks. Nothing goes to waste. Right after that, the system detected I had enough materials for an island upgrade and asked if I wanted to proceed. I didn't hesitate for a second. A gray fog covered the entire island, and I felt the ground beneath me start to shift and expand outward in every direction. A few seconds later, the fog cleared, and I was standing on a completely different island. It had gone from a cramped 16 square meters to a spacious 100. Patches of green grass had sprouted across the surface, and 2 small tree saplings were growing near the edge. Even the ground under my feet felt harder and more stable than before. My farmer talent have the saplings growth period. Instead of 30 days, they'd be full trees in just 15. I checked the island panel. Level 1 now. Prosperity value jumped from 1 to 10, which meant merchants and wanderers were more likely to visit. But the next upgrade was going to be brutal. 250 soil, 100 stone, 100 wood, and 50 mud. That was a mountain of materials compared to what I'd just spent. With the extra space, it was time to build shelter. I pulled out one of the cabin blueprints. It needed 20 wood to construct, and I had 34 in my bag, so I was covered. The system asked if I wanted to add my leftover iron nails and mud to improve the cabin. I said no. The nails and mud were too valuable right now. I needed iron nails for making more fish hooks, and mud would be needed for the next island upgrade. A drafty cabin would keep me alive. Wasting rare materials on comfort was stupid at this stage. I picked a spot, confirmed the build, and gray fog swallowed the area. When it cleared, a small wooden cabin stood there, taking up about 15 square meters. I walked inside to check it out. Calling it a cabin was generous. It was really just one room. A single wooden bed sat against one wall, and there was a wooden chair, and that was it. The floor was bare dirt, same as the rest of the island. Wind blew through gaps in the walls from every direction, but the section around the bed was built tight with no obvious cracks, which gave me some comfort. At least I wouldn't freeze in my sleep. The bed was only big enough for one person. Two would be a tight squeeze. But with the temperature dropping at night and wind leaking through the walls, sharing body heat with Shina seemed like the smart move. Squeeze in and stay warm. I arranged some stones in a circle on the floor to make a fire pit. Tonight, I'd need a fire, and I wasn't about to let it spread and burn down my brand new cabin. As for smoke or fumes, with all the gaps in the walls and the window wide open, ventilation wasn't going to be a problem. After the inspection, I gave the homemade rod to Shina. Now she had 2 rods to work with, the system rod and my crude one. Fishing with 2 lines was better than one. The homemade rod had taken a full 2 hours before its first bite, so I wasn't expecting miracles, but every catch mattered. I still had 9 iron nails sitting in my bag, which meant 9 potential fish hooks. If I could find more fishing line or thin rope, I could build 9 more rods. The more lines in the water, the more resources coming in. I searched the trading market again, hoping someone had listed fishing line or cord for sale. Nothing. Not surprising. We were all still in the early hours of this survival game. Most people barely had enough to keep themselves alive, let alone spare materials to trade. I didn't let it bother me. I posted another buying request on the regional chat channel and went back to fishing alongside Shina. While waiting for bites, I scrolled through the chat to pass the time. It was a mix of chaos and comedy. One guy said he'd fished up a zombie and barely managed to kick it off his island before it could attack. Another player was on the verge of giving up. They'd been fishing all day and still hadn't gathered even a third of the materials needed for their first island upgrade. Someone else hadn't caught a single thing since the game started, wondering if they'd starve before ever seeing their float move. One person posted offering to be someone's companion in exchange for protection, saying they were cute and skilled in every position. The desperation was already setting in. Then a message caught my eye. Someone with ID 963 was selling a blueprint, accepting the highest offer or item trades, and they'd attached a picture. I clicked on it immediately. The blueprint that player 963 was selling turned out to be for a basic workbench, something that could craft fundamental tools like stone axes, shovels, buckets, rope, and fences. The moment I saw it, I knew I had to have it. Tools were essential for any kind of long-term development on the island. If I wanted to grow vegetables or raise livestock down the road, I'd need equipment, and there was no guarantee I'd ever fish up another tool blueprint. Lucky for me, I still had that spare cabin blueprint from the treasure chest. I added 963 as a friend and offered a straight trade, my cabin blueprint for their workbench blueprint. They pushed back right away, saying their workbench blueprint was clearly more valuable. They weren't wrong, but I had an angle to play. I told them to think about it practically. A workbench blueprint was worthless if they froze to death tonight. The announcements had warned about huge temperature drops at night and strong winds. Without a cabin to block the wind, their campfire could get blown out. One night exposed to cold wind, and they'd catch a cold at minimum. And in a world like this, getting sick with no medicine could be a death sentence. Honestly, I was exaggerating a bit. The newbie protection period probably wouldn't let anyone actually freeze to death. But catching a cold was a real risk, and being sick while trying to survive on a tiny island with nothing but a fishing rod would be miserable. So my argument wasn't completely unfair. The other player hesitated, said something felt off about the deal. I didn't push too hard. I just reminded them the cabin blueprint was my only spare, and once it was gone, it was gone. I could feel the temperature already dropping as evening approached. 5 minutes later, they caved and agreed to the trade. The exchange went through the market instantly. Workbench blueprint secured. I went back to fishing. Then Shina suddenly pointed at something in the sky. A small cloud was drifting toward my island, and sitting on top of it was a black iron treasure chest. It was floating about 6 meters above the ground. My eyes lit up. So treasure chests didn't just come from fishing. They could float by on clouds too. A hidden bonus that any normal fisherman staring down at the water would completely miss. Sneaky. I was about to grab my system rod and try to knock it down. The rod was 5.4 meters long plus my height of 1.8 meters, so reaching 6 meters seemed doable. But Shina didn't even let me try. The moment the cloud drifted over the center of my island, she jumped onto the roof of the cabin, then launched herself into the air. She grabbed the cloud and the chest with one hand and landed silently on the ground, light as a cat. Not even a sound on impact from a 6-meter drop. Her agility and strength were no joke. I was starting to really understand what stats of 29 and 33 meant in practice. I opened the chest. Inside was just one thing, a single red fruit. But with my farmer talent, it doubled to 2. They were called beginner strength fruits. Each one permanently increased strength by 1 point, but only worked if your strength was below 20, and only the first 5 you ate would have any effect. I ate both immediately. My strength went from 6 to 8. I could actually feel the difference. My body felt noticeably stronger. Not superhuman yet, but getting there one step at a time. I broke down the empty chest for another 20 iron blocks, then made a mental note to keep watching the sky from now on. If treasure chests could just float past on clouds like that, I'd be kicking myself every time one slipped by without me noticing. Feeling good about the haul, I opened the chat channel to see if anyone else had spotted floating chests. I checked the chat channel, and it was on fire. A guy named Dong Hui was furious. A treasure chest had floated right over his island on a cloud, and he hadn't noticed until it was already gone. That got everyone talking, and then a Japanese player named Yamamoto started bragging. He'd grabbed a wooden chest from a cloud over his island and was rubbing it in everyone's faces, calling everyone else fools. That set the whole channel off. People were already upset about missing their own chests, and having some arrogant guy gloat about it made things worse. Insults flew from every direction. Chinese players, Korean players, everyone piling on. Then it got even better. Other players started posting screenshots of their own catches, and every single one of them had black iron chests, one tier higher than Yamamoto's wooden one. One after another, people dropped their black iron chest photos with nothing but a casual, "Heh." Yamamoto lost it instantly. His wooden chest didn't seem so impressive anymore. I sat back and enjoyed the show, but I also picked up useful information from all the chatter. Every island got a chest delivery via floating cloud. Wooden chests floated at about 3 meters above the island's surface, black iron at 6 meters. Higher tier chests probably floated even higher. The delivery seemed to happen at the same time for everyone. Whether it was daily or on some other schedule, I'd figure out in the next few days. No point overthinking it now. As night crept in, the temperature dropped fast and cold winds started blowing from every direction. I was shivering. I kept telling myself, just one more cast. My rod had been quiet for almost an hour, and I kept thinking the next second would bring a bite. That, one more cast, turned into a full extra hour of waiting. Nothing. Finally, I gave up. The sky was almost completely dark, and I couldn't afford to push my luck. The announcements had been very clear. Night fishing brought great terror. Even Shina's evaluation said she could handle anything I fished up during the day, but nighttime was the exception. Whatever came out at night was strong enough that even she might not be able to deal with it. Until I was confident in our strength, night fishing was off the table. Though I had to admit, I was curious. If the danger was that extreme, the rewards had to be equally incredible. Someday I'd try it. Just not today. I called Shina in and sorted through everything she'd caught over the past few hours. My backpack had 30 slots, each one holding unlimited quantities of the same item, so storage wasn't a concern yet. We headed back to the cabin with both fishing rods. I didn't put them in my backpack. I wanted Shina to be able to grab them first thing in the morning and start fishing without waiting for me. But I wasn't leaving them outside either. With the wind howling like this, they'd blow right off the island. Inside the cabin, I pulled out some wood and lit a fire in the stone circle I'd set up earlier. Each piece of wood burned for 2 hours, and when adding more to an existing fire, I could choose between making the flames bigger or extending the burn time. Good system. Shina and I ate a simple meal of bread and water, then sat by the fire warming up. After a while, Shina spoke up, her face turning slightly pink. She suggested that I hold her while we slept. It would be warmer that way. She seemed a little embarrassed about asking, but she said she wanted to make sure I didn't catch a cold overnight. I agreed without making a big deal of it. The bed was only meant for one person, so it was a tight fit, but with the wind leaking through the cabin walls, sharing warmth was the practical choice. Between the cabin blocking the worst of the wind, the fire crackling nearby, and Shina's soft, warm fur, my first night in this world turned out to be not so bad after all. The next morning, I woke up and Shina was already gone. So were both fishing rods. I walked outside and found her already set up at the fishing spot, lines in the water. She'd gotten up early and started working without being told. Hard-working and reliable. I couldn't have asked for a better first employee. I walked over and took the system rod from her. Today's first cast had to be mine. My farmer talent guaranteed that the first rod of each day would hook a special employee, and I absolutely was not going to risk that on my homemade rod. If the crude rod snapped mid-pull and I lost an employee, I'd never forgive myself. The unbreakable system rod was the only safe choice for this. I cast the line into the clouds below. Employee number 2. Come on, take the bait. 10 minutes felt like forever, but finally the bell on my system rod rang. I pulled up another golden chest, same tier as yesterday. When I popped the lid open, a blinding light shot up into the sky. Once it faded, I saw something I definitely wasn't expecting, a tree. A strange, lush tree I'd never seen before, sitting right there inside the chest. My first thought was disappointment. My second employee was a tree. What was I supposed to do with it? Plant it and chop it for lumber when it grew? That seemed like a terrible deal compared to Shina. I was actually considering breaking the whole thing down for materials when a small ball of green light lifted from the tree's leaves and floated right into my palm. The light faded and sitting there in my hand was a tiny girl, about the size of my palm. She wore a bright green dress and looked almost human, except her ears were small and pointed, curving slightly upward. An elf. A wood elf, to be specific. She introduced herself as Faye and called me master. I checked her stats. She was actually a princess of the wood elf tribe. Her spirit stat was an incredible 39, but her combat stats were modest, strength and constitution at 13, agility at 23. Her skills were healing and song of life. The system evaluation said it plainly. As long as she was around, no matter how badly I got hurt in the early stages, I wouldn't die. A pure healer. What stung a little was that even this palm-sized elf had higher strength than me. Every species in this world seemed to be stronger than humans. That was a worrying thought. If the weakest creatures outclassed us, what would happen when real monsters showed up after the newbie protection ended? I asked Faye about her people. She got excited and started chattering away, flying in a circle around my head before launching into a full explanation. She told me elves in this world were divided into 6 branches. Wood elves like her were peaceful nature guardians who lived in forests. Plants grew faster and healthier in their territory. They were skilled in archery, healing magic, and plant magic. Fire elves lived near volcanoes and hot regions. They mastered fire magic and had incredible control over flames. Faye made a face when talking about them. She said they were short-tempered hotheads and her least favorite of all the elf types. Water elves were gentle and peace-loving, living at the bottom of lakes and deep in the ocean. They specialized in healing and water magic. Wherever they lived, the water quality was the best around. Faye said she really liked the spirit spring water they produced. It was her third favorite drink after her own tribe's dawn water and the shadow elves' moon, well, holy water. Ice elves preferred frozen lands and were good with archery and ice magic. They looked cold and distant on the surface, but Faye said most of them were actually warm on the inside. Much better company than the fire elves, in her opinion. Light elves were mysterious and hard to find. They moved constantly, and without their guidance, outsiders could never locate their settlements. They specialized in prophecy and judgment. Faye admitted she didn't know much about them. Shadow elves were the warriors of the elf world. They focused entirely on combat magic and had no healing abilities, which made them the perfect complement to wood elves who could heal but couldn't fight well. Because shadow elves weren't picky about where they lived, they usually shared territory with the wood elves. They had something called a moon well that produced holy water with many uses, including healing and extending lifespan. But the well produced so little each year that they barely had enough for the lifespan extension, let alone using it for healing. Fayer also explained that you could tell each elf branch apart by the color of their clothing. Wood elves wore emerald green, fire elves wore fiery red, water elves wore ocean blue, ice elves wore snow white, light elves wore pure white, and shadow elves preferred black. Even the two most similar-looking types, ice and light, were easy to distinguish once you'd seen them both. She finally paused for breath after that long explanation. I jumped in with my next question. I wanted to know more about the Dawn Water, Moonwell Holy Water, and Spirit Spring Water she'd mentioned, and what exactly they could do. When Fayer mentioned Dawn Water, Moonwell Holy Water, and Spirit Spring Water, the longing in her voice told me everything. These were extremely rare and precious things. I was already scheming about how to get my hands on some. But Fayer shot me down immediately. She told me to forget about it. I was nowhere near strong enough to obtain any of them right now. She said she wished she'd smuggled some out before she left, so I could at least taste it. Then she froze mid-sentence, her expression going blank. Wait, how did I even sneak out? My mother watches me so closely. And where is our tribe's homeland? What's the chant to open our spatial gate? I can't remember any of it. She got more and more upset as she talked. It wasn't just forgetting that bothered her. It was not knowing how or why she'd forgotten. Watching her struggle reminded me of Shina, who couldn't remember anything at all about her past. I tested the waters and asked if she remembered anything besides elf-related things. She flew 2 circles around my head while thinking, then landed on my shoulder looking defeated. Everything outside of elf knowledge was gone. Even within elf knowledge, important details were missing. She said the whole world felt unfamiliar, like she'd never even heard of it before. She believed large portions of her memory had been sealed away. That actually made more sense to me. When I'd first talked to her, it seemed strange that she remembered so much while Shina remembered nothing, even though they both came from the same tier of golden chest. Now I understood. Fayer's memories were just as damaged. She simply happened to retain her general knowledge about elf culture, while the personal and critical details were erased. Different gaps, same problem. I told her not to worry about it. Memories might come back on their own eventually. She bounced back almost instantly, her sadness disappearing as fast as it had arrived. Within seconds, she was cheerfully flying circles around me again. Quick emotional recovery, I liked that about her. I couldn't help asking whether all elves were as tiny as her. She laughed and flew to an open spot on the island. Her body started growing, and within 3 seconds, she was standing there at normal human size, about 165 centimeters tall. She was genuinely beautiful at full size. But before I could get a good look, she shrank back down to palm size and landed on my shoulder again. She explained that all elves could change to normal human size, but maintaining it drained a huge amount of spiritual energy. At her current level, she could only hold her full form for about an hour each day. So unless it was necessary, elves stayed small to conserve power. She said if she ever reached her mother's level of strength, she could stay full-sized as long as she wanted. She offered to change back to her bigger form for me, but I quickly stopped her. No point wasting her energy on that. Then Fayer reminded me about the tree still sitting in the golden chest. I'd almost forgotten about it. She called it an ancient elf tree sapling, the core tree of the wood elf tribe. The system description was vague, just saying it would bring unexpected changes to my island. Thanks to my farmer talent, its growth period was cut from 60 days to 30. But Fayer filled in the details the system left out. She told me to plant it next to the cabin because living near an ancient elf tree could reduce illness and extend lifespan. I almost couldn't believe what I was hearing. Just being near this tree could give you what countless people in my old world would have killed for a longer, healthier life. This thing was a treasure beyond anything I'd imagined. I carefully lifted the sapling out of the chest, then broke down the empty golden box for 20 gold pieces. Under Fayer's guidance, I picked the right spot and planted it. The process was effortless. The moment the tree's roots touched the soil, they burrowed down on their own and anchored themselves deep into the ground. No digging, no tools needed. Magical trees were convenient like that. I asked Faye why her golden chest came with both her and a tree, when Shina's chest yesterday had only contained Shina. She thought about it for a moment, then shrugged. She couldn't remember the reason. Who cares, master? More is better, right? Fair point. I stopped overthinking it. The announcements had already confirmed that building blueprints would automatically work around precious objects on the island, preserving them perfectly. So I didn't need to worry about future construction interfering with the tree. Back to fishing. I did my usual pre-fishing ritual, clasping my hands together and begging every god and deity I could think of for good luck. Give me resources, give me blueprints, give me treasure, the whole prayer. Then I checked the trading market out of habit, searching for fishing line. This time I actually found 2 listings. I contacted the sellers, bought both lines, and immediately built 2 more crude fishing rods. They were ugly and rough, but they worked. Now I had 4 rods in the water at once. For lines pulling resources simultaneously, I was almost certainly ahead of 99.99% of all the survivors at this point. I left that tiny margin because I couldn't be sure nobody else had thought of the same trick, but I doubted many had the materials or the extra hands to pull it off like I did. With everything cast and settled, I opened the regional chat channel to kill time while waiting for bites. The player counter at the top caught my eye immediately. 8,491 out of 10,000. Over 1,500 people in my region alone had already died. We were barely into day 2. The regional channel showed 8,491 survivors out of 10,000. Over 1,500 people had died in a single night. I tried to work out how. Freezing to death seemed unlikely. Human bodies weren't that weak, even without shelter. A few might have died from the cold, but not that many. The real answer was obvious. Most of them had gone night fishing. The announcements had specifically warned about great terror during nighttime fishing, but over 1,000 people ignored it anyway. Some were probably dedicated fishing addicts who couldn't resist casting one more line. Others probably hadn't even bothered reading the announcements and just kept fishing in the dark, thinking they could get ahead of everyone else. Either way, they got themselves killed. The chat channel was a mess. People were scared. Some were crying for their mothers, saying they wanted to go home. One guy named Hu Zhihuan was being a complete jerk, mocking everyone who died, calling them weak, telling sick people to just go and die since they were useless anyway. He clearly enjoyed watching people get upset. Others cursed him out, but he just laughed and dared them to come fight him. Typical bully, safe on his own island where nobody could reach him. A player named Chun Guoi threatened to make him regret ever coming to this world if they ever crossed paths. I figured there were plenty of people like Hu Zhihuan, already dreaming about conquering other islands and enslaving people once they got strong enough. This world was going to get ugly fast. Meanwhile, some players were desperately trying to buy cold medicine or ginger soup. A lot of people who survived the night without shelter had woken up sick. Being ill with no medicine on a tiny island with limited food, that was a slow death sentence. I stayed out of the arguments. None of it helped me survive. Then Shina called out excitedly. She'd hooked a treasure chest. A wooden one, the lowest tier, but it was still early in the day, so I wasn't complaining. I popped it open, and it was packed full of wood. The system counted it as 25 units inside, which doubled to 50 when I collected it. I broke down the empty wooden chest itself for another 20 wood. 70 units of wood from one catch. If luck kept up like this, I might have enough materials to upgrade my island to level 2 by the end of the day. I patted Shina on the head and told her she'd done great. She closed her eyes and leaned into it like a contented cat. I went back to my rods humming a little tune, feeling good about the day ahead. Far away, in the heart of a vast forest, 3 elves sat beneath a towering ancient elf tree that reached into the clouds. One wore emerald green, Leah, the wood elf leader. One wore pure white, Yushu, a light elf. The third was cloaked in black, a shadow elf. Yushu had brought a prophecy. The future of the entire elf race rested on a young human man. Leah found it hard to believe. The shadow elf was equally skeptical. But Yushu assured them it wasn't just her own prediction. The light elf's grand priestess had foreseen the same thing. That silenced their doubts. The grand priestess had never been wrong. Leah confirmed that Faye had been placed into the heavenly pool, following all the rules, and should have been caught by the fated person. She'd also managed to slip in an ancient elf tree sapling alongside her daughter. Worry was written all over her face. Yushu told her to relax. If the prophecy said Fei Air would be safe, then she would be safe. Destiny had already been decided. By noon, having 4 fishing rods running at once was making a real difference. Resources were coming in much faster than before. I was eating lunch when one of the rods started ringing. I dropped my food, grabbed the rod, and pulled up another wooden chest. I was feeling good. My blessed rods were delivering. I opened the box expecting resources, but what I found inside was something very different. It was a humanoid creature, about 1.3 meters tall, with green skin, a hunched back, long pointed ears, a protruding nose, stick-thin limbs, and a round beer-belly gut. The only clothing it had was a ragged strip of cloth around its lower half. I recognized it immediately from every fantasy game and story I'd ever consumed. A goblin. My first reaction was pure disgust. This thing was genuinely ugly. In the stories from my old world, goblins usually appeared as monsters, though occasionally some showed up as merchants. I checked its stats to see which type I was dealing with. Its attributes were 9 strength, 9 constitution, 7 agility, 7 spirit. No skills. And its loyalty was -100. So, definitely a monster. No question about it. The stats were interesting though. They were higher than an average human, but not by a huge margin. With a weapon in hand, a person could take one of these down. Even without a weapon, if you were quick enough, you could kick it off the island before it knew what hit it. If early-stage monsters were all around this level, humanity had a fighting chance. The goblin let out a gargling shriek and lunged at me, claws out. It barely got 2 steps before Shina reacted. She grabbed the wooden chest it had just jumped out of, swung it like a bat, and smashed the corner right into the goblin's face. The impact launched it dozens of meters through the air and straight off the island into the clouds below. Gone. For Shina, a goblin at that level wasn't even a warm-up exercise. She immediately turned to me with concern, asking if I was scared. I told her I was fine. I wasn't as fragile as she thought. I checked the empty chest for anything else, found nothing, and broke it down for 20 units of wood. Then I listed that wood on the trading market in exchange for soil, stone, or mud. The current trade ratios were roughly 1-to-1 for most materials, with soil sometimes going as high as 1-to-2 because of high demand. Everyone knew these ratios were temporary. Once people found ways to reach other islands and could chop trees or mine stone directly, everything would shift. I posted a warning on the regional chat channel, telling everyone to be careful opening chests. I explained that I'd just found a goblin inside a wooden box and barely dealt with it in time. It cost me nothing to type a few words, and it might save some lives while also building goodwill for future trades. Some people thanked me. One person tried to sell their used stockings in the same thread, which was bizarre. A guy named Hao Pai asked if the goblin was strong and how I'd beaten it, and also hinted at some other question about goblins that he was too embarrassed to ask directly. Then that troll Hu Jihuan showed up again, mocking everyone as cowards and bragging that he could kill a goblin with one hand. Other players told everyone to ignore him and just remember his name for later when people could actually travel between islands. The truly satisfying part came next, though I only found out through the chat grapevine later. Hu Jihuan had been running his mouth online about how easy goblins were, and almost immediately after, his own fishing rod finally hooked something, a wooden chest. He was thrilled, thinking his luck had turned. He opened it up and found a goblin staring back at him. He panicked instantly. All that big talk evaporated the second he was actually face to face with one. He tried to shove the whole chest off the island before the goblin woke up, but the moment he moved the box, the creature snapped awake. It jumped out and attacked him. Hu Jihuan had no weapons, no combat ability, and was physically weak. The goblin beat him without much trouble. After winning, it pounded its chest and howled in victory, celebrating over his body. The universe had a sense of humor. The loudest talker in the chat got taken out by the exact thing he said he could kill with one hand. While Hu Jihuan was getting beaten up by a goblin somewhere, I was living the good life. For rods in the water, pulling whichever one rang, and resting my head on Shina's lap during the quiet stretches. 3 hours flew by. I kept everything useful and listed the junk on the trading market. What was useless to me might be valuable to someone else. My rod count went from 4 to 6. I'd managed to snag 2 more fishing lines from the market and built 2 more crude rods. 6 lines in the water at once. Still, most of what I was pulling up was basic materials, nothing exciting. I started blaming the rods. With my incredible fishing skills and unmatched luck, the only explanation for not catching anything big had to be the equipment. Obviously. Then a bell rang on one of the lines. Super light pull, almost no resistance. I yanked it up casually, expecting trash. It was a small red pouch, like a lucky bag. I opened it without much hope. Inside was a rolled-up piece of paper. A blueprint. My heart skipped. I unrolled it, and the system confirmed. 2 copies of a basic water well blueprint. Each well would generate 10 liters of water per day once built. The cost was 20 stone, 10 wood, 5 iron blocks, and 4 rope per well. This was huge. Water was one of the scarcest resources in the game right now. The fishing rate for water bottles was painfully low, and everyone was desperate for it. If I built multiple wells, I'd never worry about water again. Better yet, I could sell the excess at premium prices. Blueprints worked beautifully in this system. Once used, they bound to you permanently, and you could build as many copies as you wanted, as long as you had the materials and space. They couldn't be traded after use. I had 2 copies, so I'd use one and save the other to sell later. But not yet. First, I'd corner the water market during the newbie protection period when demand was highest. Once everyone had their own water sources and prices dropped, then I'd sell the spare blueprint. By that point, I'd have already made a fortune. Did I feel bad about charging high prices for water? Not really. In a world where falling behind meant getting crushed, staying ahead was survival. I had the stone, wood, and iron for the wells, but I was short on rope. Then I remembered my workbench blueprint from yesterday. The workbench could craft rope from plant materials. I built the workbench first. It cost 8 wood for iron blocks and 10 iron nails, all stuff I had plenty of after a full day of fishing. Then I checked what rope needed. 3 units of plant material per rope. Things like willow bark, nettle stems, rushes, vines, or cotton. I searched the trading market and found loads of plant materials listed dirt cheap. Nobody else had much use for them yet. I spent a small amount of wood and iron to buy enough material for 16 ropes, plus some extra stone on the side. The crafting took 3 minutes, and I had all 16 ropes ready. I decided to go all in, 4 water wells at once. The system confirmed I had enough materials and started building. Gray fog covered 4 spots on my island, and when it cleared, 4 neat water wells stood in a row, each already fitted with a wooden bucket on a rope. The cost hit hard though. 80 stone, 40 wood, 20 iron blocks, and all 16 ropes, gone. My stone reserves were completely wiped out, and wood took a big hit. Plus 4 wells crammed onto my 100 square meter island made the space feel even tighter. I told myself it was worth it. Water meant trade. Trade meant resources. Resources meant island upgrades. And upgrades meant more space for everything. I checked the current market rates. A 500 milliliters bottle of pure water was trading for 6 to 8 units of basic materials like soil, stone, or wood. That showed just how rare drinkable water was right now. My well water wasn't as clean as purified water, but in this situation nobody was going to be picky. I figured 1 liter of well water for 10 units of materials was a fair ask. With 4 wells producing 40 liters a day, that was potentially 400 units of materials daily. 400 units. Just from water. That was enough to fund an island upgrade in no time. Once I had more space from upgrading, I could build even more wells. And if the day ever came when water was no longer scarce, I could either convert the wells into a lake or just tear them down. Either way, the investment would have already paid for itself many times over. I posted my water sale on the regional channel. 40 liters of well water available, trading at 1 liter for 10 units of soil, stone, wood, or mud. Priority given to soil. Buyers had to bring their own empty bottles. First come, first served. The channel exploded. Some people were thrilled and immediately sent friend requests, desperate to buy. Others were furious. One guy called me out, saying well water wasn't safe to drink and the price was a ripoff. He demanded I share the water for free, calling it a racial crisis, where everyone should help each other. A few others jumped on the bandwagon, trying to guilt me into giving it away. Classic moral blackmail. They didn't want to pay, so they tried to make me look like the villain. Then there was Chun Guai, who had my back. He pointed out that anyone saying well water was undrinkable clearly wasn't thirsty enough yet. Fair point. One girl offered to trade her used white stockings for water, or even do a video call where I could remotely direct her. The chat was getting wild. I watched the drama for a bit, then quietly blacklisted everyone trying to pressure me into giving water away for free. These were probably the same people who didn't even bother thanking me when I warned everyone about goblins and treasure chests earlier. Ungrateful to the core. After blocking them, I noticed my friend request list got noticeably shorter. Some of the loudest complainers had apparently also sent requests hoping to buy water on the side. Hypocrites. I opened my friend list and had over 99 pending requests. People were also sending direct messages without adding me first, though the system limited those to one message until I replied. Some of the messages were absolutely outrageous. A few people sent pictures trying to get free water. I won't go into details, but my eyes got quite the workout. I started with my first two friends. Player 9999 wanted 1 liter and offered 5 soil and 5 wood. I agreed without haggling. They were my first friend in this world, so a little loyalty was deserved. They sent over 2 empty 500 milliliters bottles for free. I filled them from the well using a wooden ladle I'd crafted at the workbench, then listed the trade on the market. Player 963 wanted 2 liters and offered 10 soil, 5 stone, and 5 wood. Done. They sent over their empty bottles. I filled them up, listed the trade, and moved on. After that, I started working through the rest of my requests. Standard rate was 1 liter for 10 units. I prioritized anyone offering soil since I needed it most for island upgrades. A few smart buyers offered 11 or 12 units per liter to jump the line, and I happily served them first. The trades came pouring in one after another. The system notifications were nonstop: water out, resources in, soil, stone, wood, mud, all flowing into my inventory. I was grinning the whole time. This was a gold mine. With the water business keeping me busy full-time, I handed all 6 fishing rods over to Shina and Fei Air. Even though Fei Air was tiny, all her stats were higher than mine. If I could catch things with those rods, she definitely could. Her routine was simple: wait in small form to conserve energy, grow to full size when a rod rang, pull up the catch, set the line again, then shrink back down. Her 1 hour of daily transformation time was more than enough for that rhythm, and her spiritual energy recharged while she waited between bites. So that was my operation, me selling water and raking in resources on one side, while Shina and Fei Air worked 6 rods on the other. The day flew by. The 40 liters of well water sold out fast. There were way more buyers than I could serve. Everyone who got water was grateful and thanked me. Those who missed out asked me to remember them next time. I didn't make any promises, just said I'd think about it. The final tally from selling water was massive: 200 units of soil, 80 stone, 80 wood, and 40 mud. Combined with what I already had from yesterday and today's fishing, I was only 24 soil and 20 stone short of upgrading my island again. I jumped into the trading market and quickly swapped some iron blocks and extra wood for what I needed. Iron traded at a 1-to-2 ratio, since it was a more valuable crafting material. In my opinion, even that ratio was too low, but given everyone's current situation, nobody could afford to pay more. The moment I had enough resources, the system asked if I wanted to upgrade. I didn't hesitate. Gray fog swallowed the island. This time the upgrade was dramatic. The ground shook and rumbled as the land pushed outward in all directions. It lasted under a minute, and when the fog cleared, my island had transformed. From 100 square meters to 1,000. 10 times bigger in one jump. The changes weren't just about size. More grass covered the ground, new tree saplings had sprouted everywhere, and several new plant species appeared. The north and east sides stayed flat, but on the west side a small mud pond had formed. It looked like it was trying to become a lake. On the south side the ground had turned uneven and rocky, like the beginning of a mountain range. The island was slowly developing its own geography. Plants were diversifying, terrain was forming. If plants were appearing naturally, animals probably weren't far behind. My island was now level 2. Prosperity jumped to 91, which would attract merchants and wanderers more easily. But the next upgrade was on a completely different scale. 1,000 soil, 500 stone, 500 wood, 300 mud, 200 units of various metals like gold, silver, copper, aluminum, and iron, plus 2 different buildings of excellent quality or above. Metals being required was new. I wondered if higher-level islands started generating mineral deposits. For a moment, I considered buying up metal resources now and reselling them later at a markup. I dropped the idea almost immediately. I didn't have the spare resources to speculate with. The supply was too unpredictable. Someone could fish up a huge haul of metal tomorrow and crash the price. And metals could also come from breaking down treasure chests. Too much risk for too little certainty. The 2,500 total units of basic resources didn't worry me. With my water wells generating steady income, I could trade my way there before the newbie protection period ended in 5 days. Water prices would eventually crash as more people found their own sources, but I was confident I'd have everything I needed before that happened. The 2 excellent grade buildings were a different challenge. The quality system went from white through green, blue, cyan, purple, orange, red, gold, all the way to rainbow. Getting green tier blueprints would take luck. Either fishing them up myself or finding someone desperate enough to trade one for food or water. Over 5 days, I liked my chances. I briefly considered building more water wells tonight to maximize sales tomorrow, but the sky was already getting dark. Night meant danger, and construction could wait. My plan was to spend the evening buying up crafting materials, then first thing in the morning build several more wells and sell water all day long. The window of high water prices wouldn't last forever, and I intended to squeeze every last drop of profit out of it while it did. That evening, I leaned against Shina's lap and checked the chat channel. It was the usual mess. The Japanese player and a Korean player were going at each other, and other people from different countries were piling on. I closed it fast. No useful information, just drama. I noticed there was no floating treasure chest on a cloud today. Yesterday, every island had gotten one, but today, nothing. Others in the chat confirmed the same thing. Disappointing. Free loot was always welcome. I browsed the trading market looking for anything good, but it was mostly junk with a few useful resources mixed in. Nothing worth getting excited about. Before bed, a friend request popped up from some girl offering services in exchange for a piece of bread or half a bottle of water. She'd included a photo that was very persuasive, clearly a professional in her previous life. I rejected it without a second thought. I was in survival mode. Wasting energy on that kind of thing right now was basically asking to die. The 3 of us, me, Shina, and Fei Air, slept through the night. It had been a productive day. New healer companion, water well empire, island upgraded to level 2. Solid progress. Morning came. I washed my face, took the system rod from Shina, and cast my daily first line. The guaranteed employee catch. After about 15 minutes, the bell rang. I reeled it in, and up came another golden chest. Part of me wished it could have been platinum or jade tier for once, but I reminded myself not to be greedy. 3 golden chests in 3 days was already absurdly lucky compared to everyone else. I opened the lid and saw a long snake tail. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, looked again. Still a snake tail. I followed it upward and found a human torso. Half human, half snake. Alamia, what fantasy stories called a monster girl? Day 1 gave me a cat girl. Day 2, an elf. Now day 3, a snake woman. My talent description never mentioned that my employees would all be exotic fantasy creatures, but here we were. She was beautiful though. Flawless pale skin, perfect features. Her name was Kai Ning, from the snake people race. Her stats were the most balanced of my 3 employees. Strength 20, Constitution 20, Agility 30, Spirit 20. No extreme weaknesses. Her skills were Petrification and Poison Fog. The system evaluation joked that the reason enemies would fight with empty eyes was because they were too scared to make eye contact with her. Unlike Shina, who was a pure fighter, or Fei Air, who was a pure healer, Kai Ning was an all-rounder. Before I could say anything, she blurred toward me faster than I could track and wrapped her tail around me twice. She leaned close to my ear and asked in a soft voice if I thought she was beautiful. I told her yes, very beautiful, but could she please let go? Being coiled up by a snake tail in broad daylight wasn't comfortable. Nighttime, fine, whatever. But during the day I had work to do. She unwound herself obediently and asked what she could help with. I told her she'd be my water bottling assistant. With her handling the filling and packaging, I could focus on finding buyers and managing trades. That would speed up the whole operation significantly. Shina was watching from the side, with fire practically shooting from her eyes. Faye, on the other hand, was just happy there was another person to help develop the island. Different priorities. I left the fishing to Shina and Faye, then took Kai Ning over to the workbench to get started on the day's water business. I started the morning by crafting 24 ropes at the workbench using plant materials I'd bought the night before. 5 minutes later, I built 6 more water wells, bringing my total to 10. That meant 100 liters of water per day. Selling all 100 liters would basically take the entire day, though. The bottleneck wasn't demand. Plenty of people wanted water. It was the process. I had to screen buyers, negotiate, wait for them to send empty bottles, fill the bottles, list them on the market, and confirm with each customer. Dealing with time wasters who weren't serious buyers slowed things down even more. Kai Ning helped with the water filling step, but everything else still fell on me since none of my employees could access the virtual interface. I really wish the system would let me grant them panel access someday. I posted my water sale ad on the regional channel. Same as yesterday, copy-pasted with one addition. I was also buying metals now. Within seconds, my friend requests hit 99 again. Water was still in high demand. The regional player count had dropped to 8,211. Another 280 or so dead since yesterday morning. The massive die-off from the first night had clearly taught people a lesson, though. Far fewer were dying now. I buried myself in the water-selling grind. Time disappeared completely when I was focused. Then Shina's voice snapped me out of it. There was a treasure chest floating overhead on a cloud. I looked up. About 9 meters above the island, a cloud carried a pale yellow chest. It wasn't the bright gold I was used to from my daily catches. This was a different shade. Bronze tier. 1 level above black iron. 9 meters was a problem for most people. The system fishing rod was only 5.4 meters, and even held overhead at full stretch you'd barely reach 7 or 8 meters. Without a building to stand on, most players would miss this entirely. Some might try flinging their fishing line upward to hook the cloud, but that was pure luck. I didn't have that problem. Faye flew up before Shina could even move. For someone who could fly, 9 meters was nothing. She could have handled 90 or 900 just as easily. She grabbed the chest and carried it down despite it being several times bigger than her tiny body. Having Faye meant every future cloud chest was guaranteed mine, no matter how high it floated. I opened the bronze chest eagerly. Last time a cloud chest, the black iron one, had given me strength fruits. A higher tier chest should have something even better. Inside sat 3 fruits, each a different color, yellowish brown, blue, and green. My farmer talent doubled them as I collected. 2 beginner blood recovery fruits. Each gave 1 constitution, effective only below 20, max 5 per person. 2 beginner grace fruits. 1 agility each, same restrictions. 2 beginner wisdom fruits, 1 spirit each. I ate all 6 immediately. My stats jumped across the board. Strength stayed at 8 from the earlier fruits, but constitution, agility, and spirit all climbed to 8 as well. Everything balanced out nicely. The system evaluation updated. Some progress, but still not enough? Fair enough. I was getting stronger every day. I broke down the empty bronze chest and got 20 copper blocks. Every piece of material counted, especially now that metals were needed for my next island upgrade. Player 963 sent me a thank you message. He said the cabin blueprint I'd traded him not only kept him warm at night, but also let him stand on the roof to grab today's bronze chest. I told him we both benefited from that trade and asked him to think of me first if he ever had spare blueprints to sell. He agreed. Meanwhile, the chat channel was in meltdown. Today's floating cloud chests had been a mix. Some people got black iron chests at 6 meters, others got bronze chests at 9 meters. The black iron ones contained a single stat fruit each. The bronze ones held 3 fruits. People who couldn't reach the 9-meter bronze chests were furious when they found out what they'd missed. Some had already failed to grab the black iron chest the day before, meaning they were now 4 attribute points behind. The rage and cursing were intense. Players from different countries were fighting with each other as usual. Americans, Russians, Japanese, all going at it. I stayed out of all that and focused on selling water. By the time I'd sold all 100 liters, it was getting dark. The day's earnings: 500 soil, 204 stone, 238 wood, and 80 mud. Some buyers had paid above the standard rate to jump the queue. At this pace, I'd have enough basic resources for my next island upgrade in about 2 days. The only thing I'd still be missing was 2 different excellent grade buildings. I noticed my first 2 friends, 99.99 and 963, hadn't bought any water today, probably either fishing up their own or rationing what they'd bought yesterday. Smart. When I finally finished the water business, Sheena called me over to see what she and Fei Air had caught during the day. There was a nice pile of materials, but the real prize was a black iron treasure chest. I opened it and nearly shouted. Inside were neat little packages of fine white granules. Salt. 40 packs of it, doubled by my talent. Salt was one of those things you don't think about at first, but without it your body would slowly break down over time. This solved that problem completely. I broke down the chest for 20 iron blocks, then found a green lucky bag among the other catches. Inside were seeds, lettuce, Chinese cabbage, round cabbage, and corn. 4 packs of each, doubled to 8 total. My farmer talent cut the growth times in half. Vegetables would be ready in 3.5 days instead of 7, and corn in 7 days instead of 14. Better soil quality could shorten that even further. I rushed to the workbench and crafted a pickaxe, a shovel, and a rake, each costing 2 iron blocks and 2 wood. Then Kai Ning and I worked together to prepare a plot of land. We loosened the soil, and I built 1 more water well plus a watering can. I soaked the ground thoroughly before planting a portion of each seed type. The island was too small to plant everything, so I spread the love, a little of each variety. In about 3.5 days, I'd have fresh vegetables growing on my island. The thought of eating something besides plain bread was incredibly motivating. I saved the leftover water from the new well for personal use. 3 days without bathing, and my body was begging for relief. Not enough water for a proper wash, but enough to wipe myself down. Small luxuries mattered. Master, I caught a fish. A real fish, Sheena shouted excitedly. At first I didn't understand what the big deal was. We'd been fishing for 3 days straight. Then it hit me. She meant an actual fish. A living, breathing fish from the cloud sea below. I rushed over and couldn't believe my eyes. It was a black fish, and a massive one, somewhere around 50 to 60 pounds. In 3 full days of fishing, nobody in the entire chat had ever mentioned catching an actual fish. People had pulled up tigers, zombies, goblins, treasure chests, bags of materials, but never a fish. I'd honestly started thinking the fishing rod was just a name and had nothing to do with real fishing. The timing was perfect. I'd just gotten salt from that black iron chest, and we'd been eating nothing but dry bread for 3 days. Tonight, we were having fish soup. I took the fish from Sheena, and the system offered to auto-butcher it. I accepted immediately, no point wasting time doing it worse than the system could. It split the fish into 40 pounds of meat, a head, blood, organs, bones, and other parts. The leftover scraps I carried to my vegetable garden as fertilizer. I headed to the workbench and crafted a full set of kitchen supplies: pots, bowls, ladles, spatulas, chopsticks, knives. All basic items made from iron, copper, wood, and clay. Nothing fancy, but everything I needed. That night, the 4 of us sat around the campfire. Me, Sheena, Fei Air, and Kai Ning, each holding a bowl of hot fish soup. After days of cold bread and well water in a freezing, dangerous world, that soup was pure happiness. Kai Ning had wrapped herself halfway around the group and draped her tail over my chair as a backrest. She commented on how lucky she was to arrive just in time for homemade soup. Sheena wasn't having it. She puffed out her cheeks and pointed out that without her catching the fish, there'd be no soup at all. She kept glancing at Kai Ning's tail serving as my cushion, clearly annoyed. Her fish soup suddenly didn't taste as good anymore. Kai Ning made it worse by calling Sheena little sister in the sweetest voice possible. Sheena wanted to argue, but couldn't. Kai Ning was technically a year older. She sat there fuming silently. I put down my soup, pulled Sheena onto my lap, and tapped her nose. I told her Kai Ning was just teasing, nothing to be upset about. Then I gave Kai Ning a look and told her to ease up next time. Kai Ning covered her mouth and giggled. She found Sheena's reactions adorable. Sheena buried her face in my chest, embarrassed once she realized she'd overreacted. But she stayed right there, apparently finding my chest warm and comfortable. No complaints from me. After dinner, I browsed the trading market with one arm around Sheena and Kai Ning's tail still behind my back. While scanning through listings, something caught my eye: a fishing rod for sale. A player with ID 777 was selling a white-quality fishing rod. It was plain, offered no bonuses, and could break if you weren't careful. But it was still a proper crafted rod, not a piece of junk tied together with string like mine. The interesting part wasn't the rod itself, it was what it implied. If they were selling a rod, they probably had a rod crafting blueprint, meaning they could make unlimited rods. That was genuinely lucky. But they were only selling one, which struck me as either timid or resource limited. If I had that blueprint, I'd be mass-producing rods and flooding the market before anyone else got a similar blueprint in a couple of days. I decided not to buy it. The quality was about the same as my homemade rods, so it wasn't worth spending resources on. I moved on and kept browsing for anything actually useful. Day 4 of survival. I dragged myself out of bed, splashed some well water on my face, and took the system rod from Shina for my daily first cast. Shina called me a lazy cat for sleeping in, then immediately got a massive tug on one of her lines. She yanked it up with full force. Now that the island was big enough, she didn't have to worry about flinging things over the edge. Up came a black iron treasure chest. I hadn't even started my own first cast yet, and we already had a chest. Great start to the day. Inside was a single black longsword. My farmer talent doubled it to 2. They were blue quality, fine, grade, crafted by someone named Ku, she from the Goblinkin race, using ordinary iron. Each sword gave 5 strength while held in hand. Held, not just carried. It had to be actively in your grip. 2 swords, 2 hands. I grabbed one in each. My strength jumped from 8 to 18. For a moment I felt incredibly powerful. I swung them around a bit, but quickly realized dual wielding was way harder than it looked. Using 2 swords at once required far more coordination than fighting with just one. A single sword was probably more practical. Faye flew over and circled the blades, then told me they were definitely made by the Goblinkin, which she called the Dwarven Sprite race. She pointed to a small mountain-shaped symbol engraved on the sword hilt with the name, She, written below it. That was their tradition, marking every weapon with their tribal emblem and the smith's name near completion. I was confused. Faye had told me she'd forgotten everything except elf-related memories. How did she know about the Goblinkin? She explained that the Goblinkin used to be part of the elf race. That's why she still had memories about them. They fell under the umbrella of elf history. I asked why they'd been kicked out. She paused, then gave me an answer I never would have guessed. Because they were too ugly. I was stunned. The elves expelled an entire branch of their own race for being ugly? Faye laid out the full story. The real troublemakers were the goblins, the same disgusting green creatures I'd fished up before. Goblins had originally been part of the elf race too, but they constantly ruined the elves' reputation with their behavior. Combined with the fact that they were short and hideous, the other elves had been fed up with them for a long time. Eventually, the elves banded together and expelled the goblins entirely. Then some elves suggested they might as well kick out the Goblinkin too, since they were also short and ugly. The proposal got overwhelming support, and just like that, the Goblinkin were dragged down by the goblins' bad reputation and expelled alongside them. Completely innocent, punished by association. Faye's disgust when talking about goblins was intense. Clearly, every species on this continent hated them. I felt sympathy for the Goblinkin, though. Getting kicked out of your own race because your distant cousins were terrible seemed deeply unfair. The goblins themselves? No sympathy whatsoever. They deserved everything they got. I was about to ask more when a fishing bell started ringing. My fishing bell rang. I spun around, grabbed the rod, and hauled it up with everything I had. As the line came up, I was mentally begging the universe to give me something different. 3 straight days of golden chests. They were great, don't get me wrong, but couldn't I get a platinum or a diamond just once? Mix things up a little? Come on, give me something new. I swung the rod over my shoulder and launched whatever was on the end into the air. It traced an arc across the sky and slammed down a few meters in front of me. I looked up, blinding golden light. Another golden chest. Of course, I walked over, put both hands on the lid, and popped it open. A wash of soft pink flooded my vision. The first thing I noticed was the outfit. An elegant, dreamlike pink dress without a single flaw or wrinkle on it. Then I looked at the person wearing it and couldn't look away. She had long pink hair that flowed down over her shoulders like a waterfall. On top of her head sat a pair of soft, fluffy ears shaped exactly like fox ears. My eyes drifted to her back, and sure enough, tails. Not one, not two, but three of them, all fluffy and fox-like, swaying gently. Another beast-eared girl, this time a fox girl. My farmer talent was really leaning into a pattern here. Cat girl, elf, snake woman, and now a fox girl. At this point, I was starting to wonder if the talent description had some fine print I'd missed about exclusively recruiting fantasy females. But hey, I wasn't about to complain. I pulled up her stats immediately. Her name was by Cienair. Race, Qingxiu Fox Tribe. Age 19. Beauty score of 98. The highest I'd seen on any of my companions so far. Strength 15, Constitution 15, Agility 30, Spirit 32. Her skills were Charm and Qingxiu Transformation. Loyalty 100, as always with my fished-up employees. Qingxiu Fox Tribe. That sounded a lot like the legendary nine-tailed fox clan from old myths. But she only had 3 tails. I figured the other 6 would probably grow as she got stronger. That seemed like the logical explanation, and it was exciting to think about how powerful she might become at full strength. Her stat spread was similar to Shina's. Both had high agility, but by Cienair leaned more toward spirit, while Shina leaned toward raw strength. Between the two of them, I had both physical power and spiritual power covered on the agility-focused side. Then I read the system evaluation and nearly choked. Fishing up strange creatures every day. All female, no comment. What the hell was that supposed to mean? I hadn't even started complaining about always getting golden chests or questioning whether my daily first catch was somehow rigged, and the system was already throwing shade at me? The nerve. But fine. I could take it. Mock me all you want, system. Just keep the good stuff coming and we're square. Master, what are you spacing out about? A soft, ethereal voice pulled me back to reality. A pair of delicate white hands waved in front of my face. Nothing. Just thought of something happy, I said. What happy thing? Can you tell Cienair about it? She grabbed my sleeve with both hands and pouted at me, tilting her head to one side. She was devastatingly cute. The kind of cute that short-circuits your brain. I couldn't help myself. I reached out and ruffled her pink hair. When a girl this beautiful acts this adorable and pouts at you like that, resisting is simply not a human capability. In that moment, I suddenly understood all those stories about men being enchanted by fox spirits. Her charm skill might not even have been activated, but it was working anyway. The happy thing, I said, is that our team just gained another member who's beautiful, cute, and powerful. What's not to be happy about? That made her beam like a flower blooming. Master, you're so mean, she cooed, and dove straight into my arms for a hug. From the fishing area, I caught Shina glancing over at us. Her lips moved almost silently. Fox Spirit, Kai Ning, whose hearing was apparently excellent, slithered over beside Shina and nodded solemnly. She really is, Kai Ning agreed. For once, those two were in perfect agreement. Nothing unites rivals like a common enemy, I supposed. I broke down the empty golden chest for another 20 gold pieces, then got everyone sorted out for the day. Overnight, I'd managed to increase my rod count to 8, though that was after 2 of my homemade rods had snapped during yesterday's fishing. 2 lost, for a net gain of 2. 8 rods total now. Shina, Fei and by Cienair would handle all 8 fishing lines. 3 people for 8 rods was more than enough. Whenever a bell rang, one of them would grab it. Fei would grow to full size to pull in the heavier catches, then shrink back down to weight. Shina could muscle up anything with brute force, and by Cienair's agility and spirit stats meant she could react fast and handle surprises. I took Kai Ning with me for water selling duty, same as yesterday. The moment I said, "Let's go," her eyes lit up. She wrapped her tail around my waist and practically carried me toward the water wells, looking way too happy about it. Finally, our alone time again, she hummed. I didn't fight it. Her tail was actually comfortable to lean against, and she was efficient at filling bottles once we got going. A good work partner, even if her motivations weren't purely professional. I opened the regional channel before diving into work. The player counter at the top reads 7,999 out of 10,000. Another 212 people dead since yesterday morning. Day 4 wasn't even over yet. The death rate had slowed compared to that catastrophic first night, but it was still a steady bleed. At this pace, by the time the 7-day newbie protection period ended, we might be down to 7,000 or fewer. And that was before the Real disaster started. I posted my daily water sale ad. Same template, copy-paste, send, and the friend requests immediately flooded in. Over 99 pending within seconds. The water business was still booming. I cracked my knuckles, grabbed my wooden ladle, and got to work. Kai Ning filled bottles. I screened buyers, arranged trades, listed items on the market. The rhythm was familiar now, exhausting but profitable. Every liter of water turned into 10 units of building materials flowing into my inventory. The day ground forward, trade after trade after trade. Far away, on some other island I couldn't see, something interesting was happening. A blond man named John Jemmies was dancing around his tiny island like he'd won the lottery. And in a way, he had. He'd just fished up a silver treasure chest. Silver was 2 full tiers above bronze, and higher than anything the floating cloud deliveries had offered anyone so far. This was pure fishing luck, pulled straight from the cloud sea. After several minutes of celebrating with a dance so bizarre even he didn't know what he was doing, he finally calmed down enough to open it. Inside was a single item. One rolled-up scroll, sitting alone in the middle of a chest big enough to hold dozens of things. His excitement crumbled into confusion. He flipped the chest over, checked every corner, shook it. Nothing else. Just the scroll. He took a deep breath and reasoned with himself. If a silver chest, rarer and more valuable than anything most people had ever seen, contained only one item, then that one item had to be extraordinarily precious. The fewer things in a high-tier chest, the more valuable each one must be. That was the logic, and he clung to it. He picked up the scroll with trembling hands, held it by both ends, and slowly unrolled it. The title read, Space Pirate Class Change Scroll, Cyan Quality. He stared at it blankly. Space Pirate? Class Change. He had absolutely no idea what any of that meant. But the Cyan Quality rating was high, 4th tier in the equipment ranking system, and it had occupied an entire silver chest all by itself. Whatever it was clearly something extraordinary. He just had to figure out what to do with it. While I was busy selling water and minding my own business, something big happened in the regional channel that shook everyone up. The scroll that the blonde guy John Jemmies had found in his silver chest turned out to be a Space Pirate Class Change Scroll, Cyan Quality. The description was intense. Using it meant giving up your island and your island owner status permanently. In exchange, your island would transform into a pirate ship matching your island's level. As a pirate, monsters would never actively invade your ship, not during the protection period, not after. The chance of hooking monsters while fishing would drop dramatically too. And since he was the first person to get this scroll, he'd automatically become the Pirate King, which have the upgrade costs for his ship. A level 1 ship could recruit up to 50 crew members. Anyone who joined would also lose their island, converting it into a pirate ship of their own. The catch was obvious. The announcements had specifically said islands were the key to domination. Giving up your island meant giving up any chance at building a kingdom. No going back, ever. John Jemmies looked at his pathetic, underdeveloped island with no decent buildings, thought about his talent that apparently did nothing useful for island development, and made his decision. At his current pace, he'd just be waiting to get crushed by stronger players anyway. As a pirate, he could raid the weak and avoid the strong. Why sit around building when you could take what others had built? He used the scroll. His island instantly transformed into a beat-up little pirate ship floating on the cloud sea. It was ugly, but it had a control room that blocked wind from all sides, better shelter than most people's islands. He set a random course, turned on autopilot, and created his crew, the Dark Pirates. Then he posted a recruitment ad on the regional channel. The message was dramatic, asking if people were tired of struggling to survive, tired of going hungry, tired of freezing at night. Join the Dark Pirates, conquer the world together, embrace the glorious evolution. The channel exploded. People panicked. Someone pointed out that with pirates now active, anything you fished up could be stolen by raiders if your defenses weren't strong enough. Everything you worked for could become someone else's property. That fear hit hard. Some players immediately applied to join. Their logic was simple. Better to be the one doing the raiding than the one getting raided. Most of them had talents that were useless for island development, so they were already falling behind. Why keep competing in a race they couldn't win? Becoming a pirate and taking from others seemed like the smarter survival strategy. John Jemmies wasn't accepting everyone, though. He was screening applicants by their talents. He wanted ones that were naturally suited for piracy. Things like guiding light, which prevented you from ever getting lost no matter where you were, or extreme speed, which could boost your ship's movement speed by up to 200% for 10 minutes once per day. Those got instant approval. Talents that seemed decent but not perfect went into a maybe pile. He could fill his remaining slots with those later if needed. Once members joined, they could see each other's positions on a map through the ship's control panel. The pirate fleet was forming up. The Japanese player Yamamoto called everyone who joined cowards and traitors. A Korean player was frantically spamming the apply button, begging to be accepted. One person tried to get in by listing their physical measurements: 160 centimeters tall, 180 pounds, which they described as slightly chubby. Someone named Lin and couldn't help commenting that he needed to rethink what slightly chubby meant. I watched all of this unfold from my island while filling water bottles with Kai Ning. The appearance of pirates this early, day 4, was a serious development. It meant the power dynamics of this world were about to shift. Islands weren't the only path anymore. There were now predators actively moving through the cloud sea, looking for targets. I wasn't worried for myself yet. My island was developing fast. I had 4 powerful companions, and my prosperity value was climbing. But I made a mental note to start thinking about defense. Sooner or later, someone in a pirate ship was going to drift close enough to spot my island. And when they did, I needed to be ready. The chat channel kept rolling with pirate recruitment drama. John Jimmies was filling up his Dark Pirates crew fast, already at 35 out of 50 slots. People were tripping over each other to join, and the conversations were getting ridiculous. One person tried to win John's favor by listing their body measurements, calling themselves slightly chubby at 160 centimeters tall and 180 pounds. Someone else immediately confessed they'd committed a sin over that description and tried to add the person as a friend. The chat was descending into pure chaos. Then I got a friend request that wiped the grin off my face. John Jimmies himself was adding me. His message read, "Brother, fighting alone is too hard. Join my Dark Pirates and let's build something great together. If you agree, I'll give you the vice captain position." I frowned. Why would the self-proclaimed Pirate King personally reach out to me? It took me about 2 seconds to figure it out. I'd been selling water publicly for days. Everyone in the region knew player 666 had resources. To a pirate, I wasn't a potential ally. I was a fat sheep waiting to be slaughtered. He wanted to pull me into his crew so he could find excuses to strip me of everything I'd earned. Classic Predator move disguised as an invitation. I glanced over at Shina pulling in a fishing line, Fei Air hovering near the rods in her tiny form, Kai Ning coiling near the water wells, and Bai Xian Air watching the lines with her fox ears twitching at every sound. 4 powerful companions, all with stats that dwarfed anything a normal human could achieve. And this pirate thought I was an easy target? Of all the people in this region, he picked the one person with a small army of superhuman employees. I honestly couldn't tell if his luck was incredibly good or catastrophically bad. Either way, it was going to end badly for him. I hit reject without a second thought. Didn't even bother typing a response. That apparently made him furious. A second friend request came through almost immediately, and this time the tone was completely different. "You dare refuse my invitation? You're dead." I laughed out loud. Threatening me? Really? This guy had spent 1 hour as Pirate King and already thought he was invincible. The power had gone straight to his head, 50 sycophants kissing up to him in the group chat, and suddenly he believed nobody could touch him. I rejected the request again, but this time I left him a reply. Coordinates 666.666. "I'm right here waiting for you. Come and get me if you've got the guts." Then I blocked him. In my mind, I'd already signed his death warrant. My island couldn't move. His pirate ship could. If he wanted to pick a fight, he could come to me. I had Shina with her monstrous strength and speed. I had Fei Air who could heal any wound. I had Kai Ning with petrification and poison fog. I had Bai Xian Air with charm abilities. I had 2 blue-quality longswords that gave me 10 strength when dual-wielded. And my island was 1,000 square meters of home turf. Let them come. On the other side of things, John Jimmies was seething. He slammed his fist on the ship's control panel when he read my coordinates and my taunt. Nobody disrespected the Pirate King. He punched my coordinates into his navigation system. The result came back, 1,000 kilometers away. At his ship's current speed of about 65 kilometers per hour, and accounting for the mandatory no-sailing period between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m., he'd arrive by late afternoon the day after tomorrow. But my cocky attitude made him hesitate for just a moment. If I was bold enough to hand over my exact location and dare him to come, maybe I had something up my sleeve. Some kind of weapon or defense he hadn't accounted for. The hesitation lasted about 3 seconds. Then he opened his crew chat. His Dark Pirates roster was now full, 50 out of 50. He posted my coordinates to the group and ordered everyone who could reach the location by the day after tomorrow to gather there. They'd hit me together as their first big raid. 15 crew members confirmed they could make it, including John himself. That was 16 pirate ships converging on my position. John's brief moment of doubt evaporated completely. 16 against 1. Even if I had weapons, even if I had some trick prepared, what could one person do against 16 ships? He refused to believe that anyone on day 4 of this survival game could be strong enough to fight those odds. Hot weapons, guns, explosives were too absurd to exist this early. And even if someone somewhere had managed to get their hands on a firearm, what were the chances it would be the very first target he picked? 0, he decided. The odds were 0. 16 versus 1. The advantage was his. He leaned back in his captain's chair, already imagining all the resources he was about to plunder from me. I wasn't worried about John Jemmies and his pirates one bit. I didn't have guns, but I had something far more dangerous. Shina, Fei Air, Kai Ning, by Air, any single one of them could wipe out the entire Dark Pirates crew without breaking a sweat. If those idiots actually showed up at my island, they'd be walking straight into a slaughter. Kai Ning noticed me grinning to myself and poked my forehead with her tail, asking if I was okay. I told her some kind people would be visiting in a couple of days to deliver warmth and to stay alert. She asked who these generous visitors were. I said it was one fool, probably bringing a whole group of fools along for the ride. She nodded innocently and said they sounded really nice. On the business side, day 4 marked a turning point. The water market was starting to crack. Around midday, several other people posted water for sale on the channel. More survivors were fishing up wells or other water sources. Demand was dropping. I still managed to sell all 100 liters before nightfall, but the returns were noticeably lower. 410 soil, 154 stone, 161 wood, and 65 mud. A clear decline from yesterday. I decided tomorrow would be my last day selling water. One more push to lock in the remaining resources I needed for the level 3 island upgrade. Then I'd shut down the operation. 2 days of water sales had already netted me close to 2,000 units of materials total. That was more than enough to feel satisfied. The real problem now was the 2 excellent grade buildings required for the next upgrade. Those depended entirely on getting green quality or better blueprints, and so far I had none. Pure luck territory. I figured John Jemmies might actually do me a favor there. If his pirates had looted anything valuable before reaching me, I could confiscate it after crushing them. A man could hope. In the meantime, I had another card to play, salt. I had 40 packs sitting in my inventory, way more than I'd ever need personally. So I posted on the channel, small amount of fine salt available, trading preferentially for blueprints. The reactions were immediate. People were stunned that I had salt on top of everything else. Some were jealous, some desperate to trade. But just like the player who knew I predicted in the chat, I wasn't going to accept anything less than blueprints or truly valuable items. Everyone who came offering basic materials got turned away. Then John Jemmies made his move. He rallied his pirate crew to flood the chat with propaganda against me. His message painted me as a greedy profiteer exploiting everyone during a crisis. He urged people to boycott my trades and stop being harvested like crops. His crew members echoed the message one after another, each one calling me selfish and demanding I share my resources for free. His real motive was obvious to me. In his mind, everything I owned was already his. He just hadn't collected it yet. He didn't want me trading salt for blueprints because he planned to steal all of it when he arrived. If I traded the salt away for something powerful before he got here, it might threaten him. And he definitely didn't want me getting useful blueprints that could strengthen my defenses. The annoying part was that his tactic actually worked on some people. A portion of players genuinely bought into the boycott message. Others knew exactly what was happening but joined the mob anyway, purely out of jealousy. I'd been visibly profiting for days while they struggled to fish up enough bread to survive. They resented me for it. But the deeper truth was simpler than jealousy. These people had been ripped from their lives and dumped into a terrifying world where they were cold, hungry, and scared every single day. They needed someone to be angry at. I was a convenient target, visible, successful, and unwilling to give things away for free. I wasn't their real problem, but I was an easy outlet for all the frustration they'd been bottling up. I watched the hate messages scroll past and felt nothing. Let them vent. Let John Jemmies play his little games. In 2 days, he and his crew would arrive at my coordinates, and then we'd see who was really the sheep and who was the butcher. The hate mob in the channel kept growing, led by John Jemmies and his Dark Pirates crew. They were whipping people into a frenzy against me, calling me a profiteer, demanding I share my resources, telling everyone to boycott my trades. Some people joined because they genuinely believed the propaganda. Others knew exactly what was going on but piled on anyway because they were jealous or just needed someone to take their anger out on. I sat back and watched quietly. Every single person who cursed me out or joined the mob, I added them to my blacklist. They probably thought it was just a block list. To me, it was a death list. Every name on it was someone I'd deal with personally when the time came. If I ever crossed paths with any of them in the future, they were done. No exceptions. After about 10 minutes, my blacklist had over 100 names. The frenzy eventually died down on its own. The daily message limit on the regional channel meant people simply ran out of posts. Good. Bark while you can. I went back to screening trade offers for salt. Most were garbage, people offering basic materials I didn't need. Then a friend request popped up that made my pulse jump. It was from Lennon, the same guy who'd memorized my player number back on day 1 because he thought 666 was cool. His message included an attachment, a stone house construction blueprint, green quality. Green quality. That was excellent, grade. Exactly what I needed for my island's next upgrade. I clicked on the details immediately. The blueprint could build a solid stone house that would completely protect against wind and rain. Materials needed: 40 stone blocks, 30 wood, 30 mud, and 2 glass panels. Optional additions included straw, sand, iron nails, and cotton for improvements. But the base version was already leagues ahead of my drafty wooden cabin. I had everything except the glass. But glass could be crafted at the workbench from 30 units of sand per panel. Sand was dirt cheap on the market because it wasn't used for island upgrades. You could get 4 or 5 units of sand for just 1 unit of soil or stone. I accepted his friend request instantly and told him the blueprint was more than good enough. He asked for 3 packs of salt and 5 liters of water, saying I could deliver the water tomorrow. That was an incredibly reasonable price for an excellent grade building blueprint. Honestly, I would have paid double without blinking. But since he set the price himself, I wasn't going to argue upward. I listed 3 packs of salt on the market with his name as the designated buyer, and the trade completed within moments. After the trade went through, I asked him how he could bear to part with such a valuable blueprint. He said he had another similar one, so keeping both felt wasteful. I didn't fully believe him. I suspected he had a second copy of the exact same blueprint, which was the only reason he'd trade one away. But it didn't matter. The blueprint was mine now, and that's all I cared about. What I didn't know was that Lennon's talent was called copy. He could duplicate 1 item per day, with restrictions: no copying islands, living things, unique items, or other people's stuff, and each specific item could only be copied 3 times maximum. He'd spent his first 3 days copying the system fishing rod, maxing out at 3 copies. Today, unable to copy the rod anymore, he duplicated his stone house blueprint instead and traded the copy to me. Smart guy with a powerful talent, even if it had its limits. While continuing to screen offers, I found one more useful blueprint, a bathroom construction blueprint, white quality. Not exciting, but practical. I traded half a pack of salt for it. After that, the useful offers dried up completely. I closed the chat. With my island's population growing, for companions plus myself, I decided to build 2 stone houses instead of 1. I bought 120 units of sand from the market, crafted 4 glass panels at the workbench in about a minute, and headed to the area near the ancient elf tree sapling. Build 2 stone houses. The system asked if I wanted to add extra materials like straw, sand, iron nails, or mud to improve them. I said no. These were still transitional buildings, Green quality was great, but I'd eventually replace them with something better. No point wasting precious materials on upgrades I'd outgrow. Gray fog swallowed the construction areas. When it cleared, 2 stone houses stood there, each about 40 square meters with real glass windows. The cost was steep: 80 stone blocks, 60 wood, 60 mud, and all 4 glass panels. But the result was worth every unit. I walked into one and immediately noticed the difference from the wooden cabin. Instead of a single room, the stone house had a bedroom and a living room, a proper layout. A fireplace with a built-in chimney sat in the living room, though with the stone walls blocking all wind, I probably wouldn't even need it at current temperatures. Both rooms came furnished with basic items that the wooden cabin never had. The bed was significantly larger too, big enough for 2 people comfortably. Most importantly, no drafts. Not a single gap in the walls. No more freezing wind sneaking through cracks at night. Green quality really was a step above white quality in every way. I also built the bathroom near the vegetable garden. Small luxury, but after days of roughing it, having a proper toilet felt like civilization returning. I moved everything from the old wooden cabin into the new stone house. The empty cabin I considered keeping as a future chicken coop or duck pen, but then I remembered my island was about to be upgraded again. Once it expanded, I'd have plenty of space to build animal shelters further away from my living area. Better to just tear it down now. I demolished the wooden cabin and focused on what mattered next, getting one more excellent grade blueprint and preparing for the pirate fleet that would be arriving at my doorstep in about 2 days. Moving everything from the old wooden cabin to the new stone house took less than 10 minutes. I didn't have much stuff, and my 30-slot backpack made the job trivial. Just temporarily clear some slots, load everything in, walk over, unload. Done. After the move, I demolished the cabin. The system offered a one-click demolition option, which was convenient, and it even refunded half the building materials, tin wood back. Nice little bonus I wasn't expecting. As evening approached, I went to check what Shina and the others had caught during the day. Shina was in a playful mood, hugging my shoulders and swaying back and forth when I asked about the haul. She said she was just my little kitty and had no idea what was good or bad. I should look for myself. This girl was getting bolder with her cuteness every day. The first thing I spotted among the pile was a bronze chest gleaming with that distinctive pale yellow color. Another bronze chest. Excellent. Before opening it, I clasped my hands together and made an absurd prayer to every goddess and deity I could think of, offering 3 years of my freedom in exchange for a blueprint. Preferably a building blueprint. I popped the lid open. Sitting right there on top was a rolled-up blueprint. My jaw dropped. Did my prayer actually work? I immediately started backpedaling on my offer to the heavens, mumbling that I was just joking and please don't take it seriously. I picked up the blueprint and unrolled it. The system notification read, "Fertilizer processing plant blueprint, blue quality, doubled to 2 copies by my farmer talent." The bad news, it wasn't a green, excellent, grade building blueprint, which was the minimum tier I needed for my island upgrade. The good news, it was blue, fine, grade, which was actually 1 tier higher than excellent. It absolutely counted toward the upgrade requirement. The plant would take in useless junk and waste materials, process them over time, and produce fertilizer of varying quality depending on what you fed it. Maximum output was blue quality fertilizer. The other bad news, building it required 50 stone blocks, 30 iron blocks, 40 mud, and 5 refined iron. I had everything except the refined iron. Refined iron was clearly a step above regular iron blocks. I decided to check if my workbench could craft it after I finished sorting through everything else. I broke down the bronze chest for 20 copper blocks, then continued going through the day's catches. Instant noodles, bread, purified water, chewing gum, bamboo chair, cooking oil, a seasoning gift pack, black stockings. Wait, black stockings? I paused and looked back at the pile. Everything else made sense. Food, water, furniture, cooking supplies. But stockings? I glanced over at Shina and by Cien Air's bare feet, then quietly tucked the stockings into my bag. Useless for now. Once the fertilizer plant was built, I'd toss them in and turn them into something productive. Then something genuinely unusual caught my eye. A stone I'd never seen before in either my current or previous life. It was pitch black, oddly shaped, and when I picked it up, shockingly light. Almost weightless. The system identified it, Beginner Space Stone, Cyan quality. Doubled to 2 by my talent. Each one could be used to craft weapons, build structures, or expand my backpack by 10 slots. This was an easy decision. Weapons and buildings could wait. Backpack space was everything. Each slot held unlimited quantities of a single item type. Going from 30 to 50 slots meant I could carry 20 more completely different categories of materials, tools, food, or equipment. Only an idiot would use these stones for anything else at this stage. I used both immediately. My backpack jumped from 30 slots to 50. The relief was instant. I'd been getting uncomfortably close to running out of room with all the different materials, tools, food items, and equipment I'd been accumulating. The space stone discovery made me go through the remaining items extra carefully, hoping for another hidden gem. Unfortunately, the rest was all low-value junk. But I didn't throw any of it away. Once the fertilizer plant was operational, every piece of garbage would become useful. I called the girls in for the night. Shina, Fei Air, Kai Ning, and Bai Xian Air all reeled in their lines and packed up. Kai Ning had joined the fishing crew on her own after finishing water duty with me. She said sitting around alone was boring. More hands on more rods meant more resources, so I wasn't complaining. Before bed, I went to the workbench to check on refined iron. The recipe existed, 5 regular iron blocks per 1 refined iron. But there was a note underneath that crushed my hopes. This workbench's level is too low. Cannot craft. I'd expected that, honestly. An initial, grade workbench handling advanced materials would have been too easy. But at least now I knew the conversion rate. 5 to 1. If I found refined iron on the trading market, I could use that ratio as a price reference and pay a reasonable premium. That night, after eating well, instant noodles with seasoning and cooking oil was a massive upgrade over plain bread. I dove into the trading market specifically searching for refined iron. To my surprise, some actually existed. With over 7,000 survivors still in the region, it made sense that a few had fished up refined iron. If nobody had any, that would have been the strange outcome. One listing in particular caught my attention. Someone had put up 10 pieces of refined iron all at once. That was a lot. I checked the seller's ID. Player 9999. The number looked familiar. It took me a second, then it clicked. That was my very first friend. The person who'd traded me a fishing line on day 1. The one caught up in war before the transfer who hadn't eaten in 2 days. They'd come a long way since then, apparently. Having 10 refined iron to spare meant they were doing well for themselves. I messaged player 9999 about buying all 10 pieces of their refined iron. They replied quickly, not much else to do at night in this world without any entertainment. They asked if I still had salt available. I offered 2 packs of salt for all 10 refined iron. Honestly, in the current market, 2 packs of salt were probably worth more than 10 refined iron. Salt was desperately scarce while iron was just uncommon. But I needed the refined iron for my fertilizer plant, so taking a small loss was fine. They agreed immediately. The trade went through in seconds. With the refined iron secured, I now had everything needed for the fertilizer plant. That meant both requirements for my island's next upgrade were within reach, 2 different excellent grade or higher buildings. The stone house was green quality, and the fertilizer plant blueprint was blue quality. Both exceeded the minimum. All I needed now was to top off my basic resources, which one more day of water sales would easily cover. We chatted for a bit after the trade. I suggested that in the future, whenever they had good items to sell, they should check with me first before listing them publicly. They agreed. A reliable trading partner was worth maintaining. That night, I noticed there had been no cloud chest delivery today. Thinking back, I realized a pattern. Chests appeared every other day. If I was right, tomorrow there'd be another one. I'd confirm soon enough. Morning of day 5. Sunlight came through the glass windows of my new stone house. A massive upgrade from the drafty wooden cabin. I washed up and headed out with the system rod for my daily first cast. This time, the bell rang within just a few minutes. I'd been noticing a trend. The time between casting and getting a bite was gradually getting shorter as the days went on. I hauled it up. Golden light. Another golden chest. 5 days straight now. I'd stopped even hoping for platinum or diamond at this point. Gold was gold. I popped it open and red light burst out, filling the air with a crimson glow. Inside was a girl in a stunning red dress. I studied her carefully, looking for the usual signs: animal ears, tails, scales, wings. but there was nothing unusual. Normal ears, normal skin, no tail, human legs. She looked like a completely standard human woman. A gorgeous one, but standard. Finally, I thought. An actual human. Then I checked her stats, and my relief shattered. Name, Chui Xiao Xiao. Race, Ghost Tribe. Age 19. Beauty 97. Strength 20. Constitution 15. Agility 25. Spirit 31. Skills, Summon, Invisibility. Loyalty, 100. The system evaluation read, now you're even catching ghosts. You're unstoppable, kid. Ghost Tribe? I looked at her again, more carefully this time. She seemed to not have a shadow at all. Master, you're staring so hard at me. It's making me shy, she said, floating up out of the chest. Not stepping, floating. Her feet weren't touching the ground. No shadow. Floats instead of walks. Where's a red dress? She was literally a red-dressed female ghost straight out of Chinese horror stories. I was done being surprised at this point. Cat girl, elf, snake woman, fox girl, and now a ghost. Not a single normal human among my employees. The only regular human on this entire island was me. Whatever. She was beautiful, loyal, and had incredible skills. That was all that mattered. Her stats were solid. Strength of 20 was the highest among my companions for raw power, and her spirit at 31 was second only to Fei Air. But what really interested me was her invisibility skill. I had to see it in action. Xiao Xiao, welcome to the family. Can you show me your invisibility? No problem. Before she even finished speaking, she vanished completely. Gone. Not a trace. Master, guess where I am? Her voice tickled my right ear. I lunged right. Grabbed nothing but air. I spun left. Missed again. Hee hee. I'm behind you. She materialized at my back and wrapped her arms around me from behind. Something soft pressed against me. Then before I could react and grab her, she vanished again. I clutched at empty space. This was incredible. True invisibility. Not just camouflage or transparency, but complete disappearance. I needed to know its limits. I called over all 4 of my other companions. They gathered around me within seconds. The new teammate I just fished up has an invisibility skill, I told them. She's hidden right now. I want each of you to try and locate her. I then told Xiao Xiao to do her best to stay hidden and avoid detection. Fei Er spoke up first, almost immediately. Master, I can see her. She's right in front of you. A brief pause. Wait. She moved. Now she's to Shina's left. I told Fei Er to stop. She'd proven her point. Bai Xian Er went next. I can see her too. She's behind Kai Ning now. The outline is faint and hard to make out, but identifying her position isn't difficult, so both Fei Er and Bai Xian Er could detect Xiao Zhao's invisibility. That made sense. Both had extremely high spirit stats. Fei Er's was 39, and Bai Xian Er's was 32. Spirit likely governed magical perception. Shina and Kai Ning both turned and stared in the direction Bai Xian Er indicated, but no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't see anything. Their spirit stats were 15 and 20 respectively, apparently not enough to pierce through invisibility. This told me a lot. Xiao Zhao's invisibility was effective against physical fighters and anyone with moderate spiritual power, but could be seen through by those with very high spirit stats. Against ordinary humans, she'd be completely undetectable. Against most monsters too, probably. Only spiritually gifted beings could counter it. Xiao Xiao, try your summon skill next. Soul sealed within the world, heed my call, she chanted. A summoning circle lit up on the ground beneath her. Moments later, 3 ghostly figures rose from the circle, undead spirits standing motionless, waiting for her command. They looked eerie but obedient, like soldiers at attention. The interesting thing was that the moment she activated the summoning, her position flickered briefly, a tiny flash of visibility before she disappeared again. So using other abilities while invisible created a momentary gap in her stealth. Good to know, both for our strategies and for understanding her limitations. That brief flash when Xiao Xiao used her summoning skill, even I caught it, and I had the lowest spirit stat on the island. So the takeaway was clear. Her invisibility was nearly perfect against anyone with spirit lower than hers, but using other abilities while hidden created a split-second gap where she became visible. Against high-spirit beings like Fei Er or Bai Xian Er, she could be tracked even without that gap. Against everyone else, She was a ghost in every sense of the word. I checked the stats on the 3 spirits she'd summoned. Strength 18, Constitution 12, Agility 12, Spirit 5. No skills, no loyalty. The system evaluation helpfully informed me. Trash. Don't bother looking. In a one-on-one fight, you might actually lose to them. I wanted to throw something at the screen. Even a random summoned minion was stronger than me. Every single creature on this island outclassed the one actual human living on it. The system's evaluations had been taking shots at me from day one, and they weren't getting any nicer. But the test gave me valuable information. I asked Xiao Xiao how long she could maintain invisibility. She thought about it and said roughly 20 minutes of continuous stealth. After that, she'd need half a day to recover her spiritual energy. Her summoning was cheaper. The spirits lasted about 5 minutes, and she'd recover from the cost in about an hour. 20 minutes of perfect invisibility was incredible. I was already thinking about future applications. If we ever encountered a hostile island or settlement where the defenders had lower spirit than Xiao Xiao, I could send her into, well, pick up unattended items. They wouldn't be stealing if nobody was watching them, right? No name tags on those items, no guards visible, no signs of ownership. Finders keepers. Shina suddenly snapped to attention. Master, got a bite. She was out of my arms and gripping the rod before the bell even finished its first ring. The speed was ridiculous. She yanked up a small package about the size of 2 palms. The wrapping had pictures of what looked like rice plants printed on it. My heart started pounding before I even checked the system notification. Spiritual energy rice seeds, blue quality. Doubled to 2 packs by my farmer talent. The description made my head spin. Long-term consumption of rice grown from these seeds would comprehensively improve a person's physical abilities. Yield was 800 pounds per acre. Better fertilizer meant higher yields. Growth cycle was just 7 days with my farmer talent having the original 14. And the planting process was absurdly simple. No seedling stage, no transplanting. Just scatter the seeds into a flooded paddy field, and they'd space themselves out automatically. Each pack covered 2 acres. This was a game changer. A permanent, renewable source of food that literally made you stronger the more you ate it. Blue quality. Self-planting. Fast-growing. If I could get this crop running, my entire team would get progressively more powerful just from eating meals. Then reality slapped me. I looked around at my 1,000 square meter island, and the excitement dimmed. I had no paddy field. I had no large water source. A paddy field needed standing water, and my island didn't have a lake or stream. Just the small mud puddle on the west side that was barely starting to evolve toward becoming a pond. Even if I wanted to dig out a rice paddy, there simply wasn't enough space. Everything was crammed together already. Stone houses, water wells, workbench, fertilizer plant, vegetable garden, the ancient elf tree, fishing spots. I needed to upgrade the island first. More land, bigger water features, then I could think about rice farming. The seeds would keep. The opportunity wasn't going anywhere. Keep fishing, I told the girls. Xiao Xiao, join them for now. I need to go sell today's water. Before heading to the wells, I stopped to build the fertilizer processing plant. I had all the materials, 50 stone blocks, 30 iron blocks, 40 mud, and 5 refined iron. The gray fog came and went, leaving behind a structure about 15 square meters in size. It was simple, just an entrance that looked like some kind of dimensional portal I couldn't see through, and an exit consisting of a small pipe connected to a metal collection box about the size of a medical kit. I tested it by tossing in a ragged piece of clothing from my junk pile. 30 seconds of rumbling and grinding later, a tiny speck of white-quality fertilizer dropped into the collection box. The amount was 0.1 units. The description said it could accelerate plant growth at an extremely slow rate, basically worthless on its own. But that was just one piece of trash. The real value was volume. I grabbed every useless item I'd been hoarding, broken things, garbage materials, stuff nobody would ever buy, and shoved them all through the entrance. The system calculated a processing time of 6 hours for the whole batch. By tonight, I'd have my first real batch of fertilizer. Not amazing quality from junk inputs, but it would add up over time. And once I started feeding it better materials, the output quality would improve too. With the plant running, I headed off to sell water and push toward that final island upgrade. Everything was falling into place. I just needed one more day of grinding. I headed off to sell water with Kai Ning, starting by paying back the 5 liters I owed Lynn and from last night's trade. While I was busy with my water business, things were happening elsewhere in the region that I only learned about through the chat channel. John Jimmy's was on his way toward my coordinates, but he wasn't just traveling in a straight line. Along the way, he spotted an island a few kilometers to his left. Without hesitating, he steered his pirate ship toward it. In the vast open sky above the cloud sea, islands were visible from enormous distances if you had decent eyesight. The island he found was small, only about 100 square meters, still level 1, with nothing but a shabby wooden cabin on it. The owner was a guy named Wang Jingsheng. Wang Jingsheng saw the pirate ship approaching and panicked. He posted a desperate plea on the regional channel, begging for help and offering to buy weapons at any price. The responses were useless. A Korean player bragging that pirates wouldn't dare touch anyone from his great nation, a Japanese player mocking the Korean, a Russian player telling Wang to fight to the death, and someone else pointing out the obvious. The moment you mention you're being attacked by pirates, nobody's going to sell you a weapon because they'll want to keep it for their own defense. Nobody could actually help him. Everyone was stuck on their own islands, separated by hundreds or thousands of kilometers. All they could do was watch the drama unfold through text on a screen. John Jimmy's docked his ship alongside the island, pulled out a large machete from his backpack, slung it over his shoulder, and walked toward Wang Jingsheng with a vicious grin. The moment Wang saw the blade, whatever courage he had left evaporated completely. He dropped to his knees and slid forward in a full kowtow, begging for his life. He offered everything. All his resources, his loyalty, his service as a personal slave. He'd do anything, go anywhere, just please don't kill him. John was actually disappointed. He'd been hoping for at least a little resistance so he could test his machete. But having a servant had its uses. A pirate king needed someone to handle menial tasks on the ship. Wang wasn't part of the 50-person crew limit for the Dark Pirates. He was a personal slave, a different category entirely. So John accepted. The moment Wang surrendered, the system presented John with 3 options for the conquered island. First, merge the islands together, gaining 80% of all resources, but this option was grayed out since John no longer had an island to merge with. Second, plunder, instantly taking 50% of all resources on the island and in the owner's backpack. Third, abandon the island entirely. John was irritated that plundering only gave 50%. Then he noticed the system gave him a 30-minute countdown to make his choice. That gave him an idea. He turned to Wang and ordered him to spend the next half hour moving absolutely every resource from the island and his backpack onto the pirate ship's storage. Everything. If anything was left behind when time ran out, Wang would get to see what his own brain looked like on the outside. It was a clever loophole. If he manually stripped the island clean before selecting an option, there'd be nothing left for the 50% penalty to apply to. He'd effectively get 100% of everything. I read about all this in the chat channel while filling water bottles. The regional population counter had dropped to 7,666. The pirate threat was real, and it was only going to get worse as John's fleet grew bolder and more experienced at raiding. But none of this changed my plans. John Jimmy's was heading straight for my island with at least 15 crew members. He thought he was coming to slaughter a fat sheep. He had no idea that my island was home to 5 extraordinary fighters, any one of whom could solo his entire pirate fleet without breaking a sweat. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. I didn't witness any of this firsthand, but pieced it together from the chat channel chatter and what I learned later. After John Jimmy's took Wang Jingsheng's island, things moved fast. He made Wang call him Captain and screamed at him until he shouted it loud enough. Then he gave Wang 30 minutes to strip the island completely bare and move everything onto the pirate ship. Wang finished in under 20 minutes. The island was tiny and had barely anything on it, so even with intentional stalling it didn't take long. During the transfer, Wang secretly checked the trading market hoping to find a weapon better than John's machete, something he could use to fight back. He found nothing, not even a decent blade. So he gave up on that idea and finished the job obediently. He was thorough too. He didn't just take the resources. He demolished the wooden cabin for its materials, even ripped out the tree saplings growing on the island. He refused to leave a single useful thing behind for whoever might find the abandoned island next. John tested his loophole theory by selecting the plunder option after the island was already emptied. The system confirmed he received 0 resources from plundering because there was nothing left to take. His method worked perfectly. By manually transferring everything before making his official choice, he bypassed the 50% cap entirely. The one thing he couldn't steal was the island's land area. That stayed behind, empty and useless. He noted that as the main downside of being a pirate, you could take someone's stuff, but never their territory. Still, pirates had their own advantages. Mobility, the ability to strike anywhere and flee in any direction if things went wrong. What one didn't realize until after the conquest was finalized was that his virtual interface had gone completely gray. As a slave, he lost access to everything. Chat, trading, backpack management, all functions locked. Unless he somehow got his slave status changed, he was permanently cut off from the system's tools. He watched his empty island shrink into the distance and started crying. John caught him, pulled out the machete, and asked if he wanted to stay with his island permanently, implying he'd kill him and leave his body there. Wong immediately dried his tears and started praising John with desperate flattery. Then Wong gathered his courage to make a request. He asked if John could change his status from slave to follower or something similar. He explained that as a slave, he couldn't use the virtual interface at all, which meant if John ever sent him on a solo mission, he'd have no way to report back or communicate. As a follower, he might regain access to the chat function at least. John actually saw the logic in this. He checked the slave management panel and discovered that non-slave subordinate statuses allowed the master to selectively grant interface permissions. He could change Wong to follower while still blocking his access to trading and the backpack, preventing him from secretly buying weapons. But John wasn't stupid enough to grant this immediately. He knew Wong had 0 backbone, and people without backbone were exactly the type who'd turn on you the moment they sensed weakness. If he gave in too easily, Wong would start pushing for more privileges. The right approach was to keep him desperate and obedient, break him down completely, and only reward him after he'd proven absolute loyalty. "We'll see how you perform," John told him, and ended the conversation. Wong accepted it with an even wider smile. He hadn't gotten what he wanted, but at least there was hope. That was enough to keep him compliant for now. The pirate ship resumed course toward my coordinates. John now had a slave, a machete, a full crew of 50 pirates, and at least 15 ships converging on my location for tomorrow. He was feeling more confident than ever. Good. The more confident he felt, the harder the fall would be. While I was going about my day, a major development hit the regional channel. A player named Chun Guoi, the same guy who'd been standing up to trolls and bullies since day one, posted a big announcement. He'd fished up something called an alliance token, which let him create an organized faction. He named it Eternal Flame, with the meaning that human civilization's fire would never go out. His recruitment speech was impressive. He talked about how humanity faced threats both from the world's native dangers and from people within their own ranks, an obvious jab at the pirates. He called for anyone with good character and a sense of justice to join. He also warned that anyone who snuck in with bad intentions would deeply regret it. The alliance could hold 300 members. The response was overwhelming. People flooded in with passionate messages of support. Within minutes, all 300 spots were filled. Those who didn't get in were disappointed but stayed loyal, holding on to Chun Guai's promise that once the alliance leveled up, he'd expand the roster and invite them. I had to admit, compared to John Jemmy's, Chun Guai was far smarter about building power. Opening with talk of humanity's survival and civilization's future immediately put him on the moral high ground. Whether he truly meant it or not, that kind of messaging attracted followers naturally and made it very hard for anyone to openly oppose him without looking like a villain. Not that John didn't try. He immediately started sabotaging from the shadows. He couldn't use his real name. Openly opposing someone fighting for humanity would put him on the wrong side of public opinion. So he switched to anonymous posting using random ID numbers and ordered his pirate crew to do the same. They flooded the chat with doubt and accusations, calling Chun Guai's supporters gullible fools, questioning whether his promises were real, suggesting he was just using pretty words to manipulate people. It worked to some extent. The regional channel quickly split into 3 camps. One side believed in Chun Guai and supported the alliance. Another side distrusted him, claiming he was just an opportunist using moral grandstanding to control people. The third group sat on the sidelines, eating metaphorical popcorn, watching both sides argue and occasionally throwing fuel on the fire for entertainment. John was thrilled watching the chaos. Division was exactly what he wanted. If all the island owners united under one banner, his pirate fleet wouldn't be able to raid freely anymore. Keeping everyone fighting among themselves was essential for his survival strategy. As for me, I didn't care about any of it. I wasn't joining Chun Guai's alliance, and I certainly wasn't joining the pirates. My position was simple: leave me alone and we're fine. Come to my island looking for trouble, and I'll rip you out root and stem. With a new superhuman companion joining my team every single day, I had every reason to be confident in that promise. While John was busy stirring up drama in the chat, his slave Wang Jingxing spotted another island in the distance. John's eyes lit up, and he immediately changed course to intercept it. He still had plenty of time before tomorrow's noon gathering at my coordinates. Along the way, he planned to raid every island he came across, bulldozing anyone unfortunate enough to be in his path. He was getting greedier and more aggressive with every conquest. Good. Let him build up that confidence. Let him think he was unstoppable. Tomorrow, when he arrived at coordinates 666.666 with his little fleet, he'd learn what real power looked like. After selling the day's water and collecting the finished fertilizer from the processing plant, 20 green quality and 130 white quality units, I tallied up all my resources. I had 1,240 soil, 290 stone, 610 wood, 380 mud, and 380 units of various metals. The 2 different excellent grade buildings were already done. All I was missing was 210 more stone. Stone was running low because building the stone houses and fertilizer plant had eaten through my supply, and fewer people were listing stone for trade lately. But 210 units was nothing. I opened the market, sorted stone listings by lowest price, and started buying. A few packs of salt here, some extra soil there. Within minutes I had enough. The system detected I'd met all the requirements and asked if I wanted to upgrade. I didn't hesitate for a second. Gray fog rolled in and covered everything. The ground shook violently. This time the rumbling lasted a full 5 minutes. When the fog finally cleared, I was standing on a completely transformed island. 10,000 square meters. 10 times bigger than before. The resource cost was enormous. 1,000 soil, 500 stone, 500 wood, 300 mud, and 200 units of metals, with the system automatically using the cheapest metals first. The island was actually starting to look like a real place now. Lush green grass covered the ground everywhere. More trees and plants had sprouted across the surface. On the west side, the little mud puddle had grown larger, maybe one more upgrade, and it would become a proper small lake. The south side had gotten noticeably hillier, with uneven terrain rising and falling like the beginnings of a real mountain range, and the vegetation there was thicker than anywhere else. The east side was still cluttered with all my buildings, so I couldn't see much change. But the north side had developed softer, richer soil, perfect for farming. If I was going to build rice paddies for those spiritual rice seeds, that was clearly the spot. My prosperity value had jumped to 666, fitting number. That would attract merchants and wanderers more frequently. Then I looked at the requirements for the next upgrade, and my excitement crashed hard. Level 4 needed 20,000 soil, 8,000 stone, 8,000 wood, 8,000 mud, 6,000 metals. That was 50,000 total units of basic materials. On top of that, I needed 3 different fine grade, blue, buildings, 1 rare grade, cyan, building, and 5 elemental energy crystals, 1 each of wood, fire, water, earth, and metal. I didn't even know what energy crystals were, let alone where to find 5 different elemental types. The difficulty spike was insane. Gathering 50,000 units of materials through fishing alone would take forever. This was clearly the point where the game forced people to stop being peaceful farmers and start fighting. Anyone developing fast with military strength would inevitably start invading others to collect resources. People would band together, merging islands to pool resources under one leader. Those without ambition would willingly give up their island owner status just to live under someone strong enough to protect them. I could see it clearly. Scattered islands would soon consolidate into large territories controlled by powerful factions. Wars would break out everywhere. The level 4 upgrade requirement was the fuse that would ignite all of it. I felt a wave of gratitude for my farmer talent. Without Shina, Fei Air, Kai Ning, by Xianair, and Xiao Xiao, there was no way I could stay independent. A single person with no faction backing them would be crushed in the coming conflicts. Nobody would let a lone wolf stay neutral when resources were this scarce and competition this fierce. My companions were the only reason I could stand alone against the world. Still, even with my team, gathering 50,000 units by fishing was unrealistic. I'd need to find resource-rich, uninhabited islands out in the world, or hope for generous rewards from whatever events the system had planned. And if neither of those panned out, well, I'd have to start what I mentally called my recycling plan, taking back islands from people who couldn't defend them. It wasn't personal, but the resource demands from here on out were going to force everyone's hand. 3 to 4 was already this brutal. 4 to 5, 5 to 6, the numbers would only get more terrifying. A lot of people were going to be eliminated by these requirements alone. No more selling water, I decided. The resources I'd get from water sales were a drop in the bucket compared to the 50,000 units needed for level 4. I'd have to sell for a month or two straight to gather that much, and by then the market would have collapsed anyway. It just wasn't worth it anymore. I was free from the water grind at last. The girls were all excited about the bigger island. Shina was bouncing around happily, checking out the expanded territory. Kai Ning, Fei Air, and the others agreed. More space meant a better life for all of us. Since everyone was gathered together, I asked them about energy crystals. 5 different types were needed for the next upgrade: wood, fire, water, earth, and metal, and I had no idea what they were. The announcements had never mentioned them. Shina tilted her head and shook it. Never heard of them. Fei Air didn't know either. Bai Xianair hugged my arm and said she obviously knew nothing about it. Xiao Xiao was busy floating around in her semi-transparent form, which she apparently found extremely entertaining. I had to stop and tell her she could do that during the day all she wanted, but absolutely not at night. The last thing I needed was waking up at 3 a.m. to find a ghost girl hovering over my bed, staring at me with a gentle smile. Kai Ning backed me up. She'd already traumatized me one night when I woke up and found a long snake tail draped across my body. She said the price she paid for that scare was severe, though the very next night I'd apparently gotten used to it and just used her tail as a pillow. Xiao Zhao's eyes lit up when she heard the word scared. She seemed way too interested in that concept. I told her if she scared me, I'd spank her. Her response, really? Really? Was not reassuring. I moved on and asked Kai Ning, my last hope. To my surprise, she actually had something. She said the moment I mentioned energy crystals, fragments of memory surfaced in her mind. She explained that energy crystals were basically condensed formations of a single type of elemental energy. Take a volcano, for example. Deep inside where temperatures were extreme, a fire attribute energy crystal could naturally form over time. That was the most powerful kind, born from nature itself. But natural crystals weren't the only type. Weaker ones could be formed through cultivation or artificial means. More importantly, she told me that some monsters in this world carried energy crystals inside their bodies. A powerful Earth-type beast, for instance, could develop one through years of absorbing Earth energy, what you might call a monster core or demon pill. That core was essentially an Earth attribute energy crystal. Then she pointed at the ancient elf tree sapling behind me. She said it was brimming with life force. If it continued growing safely, it would eventually produce a wood attribute energy crystal on its own. At that point, the tree itself would basically be a living wood crystal. The older it got, the stronger the crystal would be. That was all she remembered, and she wasn't sure if everything was accurate. But it was more than enough. I grabbed her cheeks and squeezed them in appreciation. She'd just solved one of my biggest worries. Bai Xianair immediately claimed my other arm, not wanting to be left out. The key takeaway was huge. I didn't need to find volcanoes or trek to the bottom of the ocean. Monster cores counted as energy crystals. Once the newbie protection period ended in 2 days and monsters started invading islands, I could hunt them with my team. Even if only 1 out of every 100 monsters dropped a crystal, with Shina, Fei Air, Kai Ning, Bai Xianair, and Xiao Xiao doing the fighting, we'd tear through monsters fast enough to collect what we needed. As for who'd be doing the actual killing versus who'd be watching from a safe distance, well, the important thing was the team total would be mass slaughter. My personal contribution to the violence was a minor detail. Shina's reflexes had gotten razor sharp after days of fishing. The moment a bell rang, She had the rod in hand before anything could pull it under. This time she pulled up a clear glass bottle with what looked like a folded document inside. I took it from her, popped the cork, and shook it out. It looked like a blueprint, but felt different somehow. The system confirmed it, a treasure map. My farmer talent doubled it, giving me 2, but each had a different serial number and different properties. The first one was Treasure Map 777. Using it, just tear it to activate, would teleport me and up to 5 companions to a random location containing treasure. The amount could be anything from small to countless. The location could be an island, a castle, deep underwater, anywhere. Danger level, unknown. It couldn't be opened yet, though. The countdown showed about 55 hours, which lined up perfectly with the end of the newbie protection period. The second map was 8,820, created by my talent's doubling effect. Same concept, but it only allowed 2 people total. Different number, different capacity. Interesting that the duplicated version wasn't identical. So no treasure hunting until the protection period ended. For the first time, 7 days of safety felt too long. But the wait had a silver lining. 2.5 more days meant 2 or 3 more daily employees joining my team, giving me even more options for who to bring along. I tucked the maps away before the girls got too curious. Kai Ning had already peeked over my shoulder and spotted the word, treasure, which immediately drew Xiao Xiao out of nowhere asking to come along. I told everyone we'd discuss it later and sent them back to fishing. About half an hour later, a cloud drifted over my island carrying a chest that gleamed silver white. My theory was confirmed. Welfare chests appeared every other day, and each time the quality went up. Day 1 was black iron, day 3 was bronze, and now day 5 was silver. The pattern suggested day 7 would be gold, and that would probably be the last one before the protection period ended. The silver chest floated at 12 meters, even higher than the bronze one at 9. Most people would have no chance of reaching it. Fayer zipped up and brought it down effortlessly. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside were 4 fruits, each a different color: red, yellowish-brown, blue, and green, plus a blueprint. My talent doubled everything. 2 strength fruits, 2 blood recovery fruits, 2 grace fruits, 2 wisdom fruits, and 2 arrow tower construction blueprints at blue quality. I ate all 8 fruits immediately. Each stat went up by 2 points across the board. My attributes were now perfectly balanced at 10 across strength, constitution, agility, and spirit, exactly double that of an average adult human. The system evaluation noted that while my stats were only twice a normal person's, my actual combat power was far beyond just double. That made sense. The stat bonuses from my dual swords, plus my team of superhuman companions, meant raw numbers didn't tell the whole story. The arrow tower blueprints were a welcome bonus too. Blue-quality defensive buildings would be useful once monsters started invading after the protection period ended, and they counted toward future upgrade requirements for higher-tier construction. All in all, a fantastic haul. Silver chests were no joke. I broke down the empty silver chest for 20 units of silver, then studied the arrow tower blueprint. It was a defensive building. Once constructed, it would automatically fire arrows at any stranger, enemy, or monster entering its range, keeping up the assault until everything hostile was dead or the arrows ran out. Building 1 required 20 each of stone, iron, wood, and mud, plus 3 refined iron. The arrows themselves could be crafted from different material combinations, with better materials producing sharper, more lethal arrows. Undamaged arrows could even be recovered and reused. The timing of getting a defensive blueprint was no coincidence. With the protection period ending in 2 days, the system was clearly preparing everyone for what was coming. The chat channel confirmed I wasn't the only one. People were showing off weapon and defense blueprints left and right. Someone got a crossbow blueprint. Another person got a similar one in green quality. Attack and defense blueprints were flooding in all at once. I knew exactly what that meant. With weapons now in everyone's hands, the world was about to descend into chaos. There's a saying, give someone a blade and the urge to kill follows naturally, especially in a world without any laws. Some people were bragging. Others were furious about missing the silver chest because it floated at 12 meters, too high to reach without buildings or a flying companion. A Japanese player was screaming about why his chest was only bronze while others got silver. Someone who'd watched the silver chest drift right over their head without being able to grab it told him to shut up. The funniest moment came from John Jimmies. He posted a furious complaint about how pirates didn't get welfare chest deliveries at all. No cloud chests had appeared over his ship. He was livid. He'd been the one to fish up a silver chest originally, so he knew better than anyone how valuable they were. Now island owners were getting silver chests for free while his pirates got nothing. Everyone piled on him with zero sympathy. People called him out for wanting the benefits of being a pirate while also wanting island owner perks. Shun Gui chimed in. Pirates are pirates. Lowlifes will never amount to anything respectable. John was losing it, slamming his ship's control panel, swearing he'd deal with everyone after he finished with me first. He'd also been buying weapons from the market. With so many weapon blueprints appearing, he knew mass-produced weapons would be listed for sale soon. He was now 150 kilometers from my coordinates with 19 people total. He'd conquered 3 more islands along the way, enslaving each owner. He'd arrive by tomorrow. 19 against 1, he kept telling himself. No matter what weapons you have, you're dead. I had 3 reasons for not building the arrow towers yet, though. First, 1 or 2 towers wouldn't make much difference. I need at least 4 to cover all sides of my island, and that required 12 refined iron I didn't have. Second, my island was still small enough that Na and the others could defend every inch of it without help. Towers would matter more when the island got much bigger. Third, and this was the important one, I didn't want John Jimmies to see arrow towers when he arrived. If he spotted serious defenses, he might panic and flee before I could deal with him. I wanted him to feel confident enough to commit to the attack. I wanted him to land on my island thinking he'd already won. A man who was openly hostile toward me, running free in the world? Absolutely not. Better to let him walk into the trap willingly. As the day wound down, I sorted through everything the girls had caught. Some real gems in the pile, toothpaste, 100 bags of cement for future construction, 4 chickens and 4 ducks with breeding pairs in each group, and bear. Meat from a wild bear that had been hooked as a monster. Na had punched it in the face the moment it appeared, and it died instantly. That had been happening regularly over the past 5 days. Random wild creatures getting hooked and pulled up as hostile mobs. Na dealt with every single one with a single charged punch. If they were edible, they became dinner. If they were like goblins, disgusting and inedible, we tossed the corpse back into the cloud sea. I set up fenced enclosures for the chickens and ducks. 1 rooster with 3 hens, 1 drake with 3 ducks. With my farmer talent having growth cycles, I'd have a steady supply of eggs and poultry before long. That night, our dinner featured bear paw, a delicacy I'd never imagined eating while floating on a sky island in another world. Life was strange, but it was getting better every day. Tomorrow, John Jimmies and his 19-person fleet would arrive at my doorstep. I could hardly wait. Day 6. Another golden chest from my daily first cast. At this point, I'd given up hoping for anything higher. Gold was just what my system rod delivered, and complaining about it would be ungrateful considering most people never saw a single golden chest. I popped the lid, and a flash of ocean blue filled my vision. Inside was a girl in a blue dress with long blue hair cascading over her shoulders. Her face was stunning, porcelain skin, delicate features, effortlessly beautiful. But the real attention grabber was below her waist. Instead of legs, she had a fish tail. Not just any fish tail. It matched every description I'd ever heard of the legendary merfolk. A mermaid. An actual mermaid princess. Her name was Li, from the merfolk tribe. Strength 30, Constitution 25, Agility 20, Spirit 15. Skills: wave-breaking strike and reflection piercing. The system noted she could unleash even greater power in water. I was genuinely surprised by her stats. She looked delicate and sweet, but her build was pure tank and brawler, the highest strength of any companion I'd fished up so far, tied with Kai Ning's Agility Focus 30. This cute little mermaid was built for frontline combat, not healing or support. The system evaluation took another shot at me, but I'd learned to just skip that part entirely. Besides Li, I noticed a blue sphere about the size of a tennis ball sitting in the chest. I'd get to that in a moment. Welcoming the new member came first. Lily was shy. When she looked up and our eyes met, her face turned pink and she immediately looked back down. A refreshing change from Kai Ning's aggressive flirting and by Xian Air's expert-level cuteness attacks. Not every companion needed to be bold, and honestly my hands were already full managing the existing dynamics. I asked if she remembered where she came from. She glanced at her own tail uncertainly and guessed she was probably from the merfolk. But she couldn't remember which merfolk settlement or any details about her past. Same memory loss as everyone else. Then she reached back into the chest and picked up the blue sphere. I remember this, she said, holding it out to me. It was called a water spirit pearl. Lily explained its abilities carefully, clearly worried I wouldn't understand. It could purify any body of water it was placed in, making the water quality incredibly clean. It could regenerate water. If a lake started losing water for any reason, the pearl would produce unlimited water to replace what was lost. And it could store excess water. If heavy rain caused flooding, the pearl would absorb the surplus to prevent overflow. A perpetual water cycle machine. Purification, unlimited regeneration, and flood prevention all in one magical orb. This was beyond a treasure. It was a game changer for my entire island's development. With this pearl, I truly never needed to worry about water again. Not for drinking, not for farming, not for anything. The water wells that had built my early fortune were now secondary. This single pearl outperformed all 11 of them combined. More importantly, it solved my rice farming problem. I'd been holding on to those blue-quality spiritual energy rice seeds because I had no paddy field and no reliable water source to flood one. Now I had both pieces of the puzzle. The island's west side already had a developing mud pond from the upgrades. I could dig out a reservoir there, even just a couple 100 square meters deep enough to hold water. With the water spirit pearl maintaining the water level and keeping it pure, it would function like an infinite water supply. Then on the north side, where the soil was soft and perfect for farming, I could carve out a small paddy field and channel water from the reservoir. Small didn't matter. Any amount of spiritual rice growing was better than none. Every meal of that rice would gradually strengthen everyone's bodies. But first, I needed to make sure Lily was comfortable. I asked if walking on land with a fishtail was uncomfortable for her. She said it was, but then showed me something useful. She could transform her tail into human legs when on shore. Her lower half shimmered, and suddenly she was standing on two perfectly normal bare feet. The transformation was seamless. I asked why she hadn't changed earlier. She went red again and mumbled that she'd noticed me staring at her tail, so she thought I preferred her that way. I tapped her forehead gently and told her to always use her legs on land from now on. If I wanted to see her tail, there would be specific times and places for that. She innocently asked what those specific times and places were. I coughed and changed the subject. The important question was whether she could survive long-term out of water. She said she needed at least 4 or 5 hours in water daily under normal circumstances, though right now she could push through several days on land without problems if necessary. Her eyes showed real determination when she said it. She didn't want to be a burden. That settled it. Once I built the reservoir with the water spirit pearl, Lily would have a permanent place to rest and recharge. Everything was coming together. 6 companions now, each bringing something unique. A fighter, a healer, a stealth operative, a charmer, a ghost summoner, and now an aquatic warrior with a magical water artifact. Tomorrow, John Jimmies was scheduled to arrive with his fleet. And the day after that, the protection period would end. Things were about to get very interesting. Since Lily needed to spend at least 4 or 5 hours in water each day, digging a reservoir on the island's west side wasn't just a nice idea anymore. It was a necessity. I gathered everyone together and laid out my plan. Excavate a deep pit on the southwest side as a water reservoir with the water spirit pearl inside, then carve out a small paddy field on the north side for the spiritual rice seeds. Everyone was on board. They'd been spending most of their time fishing with nothing else to do, so the chance to actually build something got them excited. Kai Ning pointed out that once the island expanded further, we could dig channels from the reservoir to distribute water across the entire island. Sheena immediately latched onto the most important benefit in her mind: unlimited bathing water. As a cat girl who was naturally obsessed with cleanliness, going days without a proper bath had been driving her crazy. The most she'd managed was wiping down with a damp towel. The arrival of Li and the water spirit pearl meant freedom from rationing water, and Sheena was practically glowing at the thought. I crafted 10 pickaxes and 10 shovels at the workbench, then marked out roughly 150 square meters on the west side of the island. I took Sheena, Kai Ning, by Cien Air, Xiao Xiao, and Li Li with me for the digging crew. Fei Er stayed behind to watch the fishing rods. Let's dig. I swung the first pickaxe and broke ground. The others followed immediately. Xiao Xiao got creative. She summoned 3 undead spirits and handed each one a pickaxe, so she had a 4-person crew all by herself. The sight of 3 ghosts mechanically swinging mining tools was both hilarious and surprisingly effective. With everyone's superhuman stats, what would have taken a normal person days was accomplished in a fraction of the time. The earth practically flew out of the ground. While we were busy digging, something was happening that I didn't notice right away. A pirate ship had quietly approached from the distance and stopped a few kilometers out from my island. The person on board was one of John Jimmy's crew members, a guy named Masano Taiken. He'd arrived at my coordinates ahead of the main fleet. He immediately reported to the pirate cruise group chat, confirming he had visual on my island. John ordered him to share his exact position and told everyone else to converge on those coordinates. 3 hours until the attack. And he made it very clear, anyone who acted on their own and tipped me off would be skinned alive. The crew members started checking in one by one, confirming they'd received the orders. Then someone named Yajiriku started a chain of sycophantic messages, wishing the captain victory and glory. Within seconds, every single crew member was copying the format, flooding the chat with identical messages praising John. Nobody dared stay silent. John might not remember who said something nice, but he'd absolutely remember who didn't. John watched the flood of flattery with a smug grin. He was pleased. Everyone had fallen in line. He mentally marked Yajiriku for promotion to vice captain after the raid. A person that good at reading the room and starting loyalty displays was too useful to waste. Then John launched into a speech about how my island would be their first major conquest, the opening shot in their campaign to dominate everything. He painted a grand vision of the dark pirates plundering women, resources, islands, and eventually the entire world. His crew ate it up, replying with pledges of eternal loyalty and devotion. Behind his screen, John was laughing at all of them. Fools. So easy to manipulate, he muttered to himself. He knew exactly what they were. Pawns, useful idiots who'd follow him as long as he kept feeding them dreams. The more gullible followers he had, the closer he got to becoming a true pirate king. He'd upgraded his ship to level 2 over the past couple of days, and his confidence was at an all-time high. Back on my island, Xiao Xiao happened to look up while waiting for her spiritual energy to recover between summons. She spotted something in the distance, a tiny ship's silhouette floating on the cloud sea, several kilometers away. Master, look over there. Isn't that a pirate ship? You said a couple days ago that someone was coming to cause trouble. Is that them? I'd already told all the girls that some people would be showing up to pick a fight. I just hadn't shared the specifics of who they were. I squinted in the direction she was pointing. I could barely make out a small dark shape against the clouds. Too far to see clearly, but the outline was unmistakably a ship. It's a bit far to tell for sure, I said, but yeah, that's probably them. They were gathering, getting into position, thinking they had the element of surprise. I looked back down at the half-finished reservoir, then at my team. Shina covered in dirt but grinning. Kai Ning's tail sweeping excavated soil into neat piles. Lili carefully shaping the bottom of the pit. By Xian using her agility to haul rocks out at impressive speed, and Xiao Zhao's ghost crew mindlessly pickaxing away. Let them gather. Let them plan. Let them give their little speeches about conquest and glory. When they finally worked up the courage to come ashore, they'd find out exactly what was waiting for them. I was certain the ship in the distance belonged to the dark pirates. No random passerby would stop that far away and just sit there. A normal traveler would either approach cautiously to check out my island or keep moving. Only someone waiting for reinforcements would park at that distance and hold position. Bringing your whole crew to deliver gifts? How thoughtful of you, John. I chuckled to myself. When he'd first sent me that threatening friend request, I'd assumed he was arrogant enough to come alone. Turns out he was more cautious than I gave him credit for. He'd rallied his people for a group assault. That was fine by me. More pirates meant more loot to collect. The more the merrier. Kai Ning asked why they were just sitting out there instead of attacking right away. I explained they were probably waiting for the rest of their fleet to arrive before launching a coordinated strike. Lili looked worried. She suggested we take the initiative and attack them first while they were still gathering. She pointed out that she and Fei Er could fly or carry everyone across the distance easily. The offer was appreciated, but unnecessary. Their individual strength is lower than mine, I told her. They're no threat to us. The only thing we need to be careful about is whatever weapons they might have. With all those weapon blueprints dropping from silver chests yesterday, I was sure they'd purchase some arms from the market. But it would all be cold weapons, swords, spears, maybe crossbows at best. The fact that they needed to assemble a whole fleet just to attack one island told me everything about their actual combat ability. They were weak and they knew it. As for firearms, even if someone somewhere had a gun blueprint, they wouldn't have the materials to build one this early. And even if they miraculously did, no sane person would list it for sale on the market. You'd keep something that powerful for yourself. So the pirates were coming with sticks and pointy metal. Against my team, that was nothing. Their strength is lower than yours, master. Lily's anxiety vanished instantly. Then don't worry. With power like that, they won't even get a chance to use whatever weapons they're carrying. I laid out my strategy. We'd continue digging the reservoir and act normal. When the pirates started moving toward the island, everyone except Faye would find hiding spots and stay out of sight. Once the pirates docked and stepped onto my island, the girls would ambush them without warning. No speeches, no negotiations, just immediate takedown. Faye would stick with me as my personal healer. Not that I expected to need healing, but caution cost nothing. I knew we could crush them in a straight fight without any tricks. Any one of my companions could solo their entire fleet, but I wanted the ambush approach for a specific reason. If the pirates saw 6 powerful fighters standing on the island waiting for them, some might panic and flee before we could catch them all. I wanted every single one of them. No stragglers running off to cause problems later. I'd also considered sending Xiao Xiao to invisibly assassinate the first arrivals, but decided against it. If those scouts suddenly went silent, the ones still en route might get suspicious and change course. Better to let them all gather, then wipe them out in one clean sweep. Lily volunteered to keep watch on the ships while we continued digging. She'd alert me the moment they started moving. I thanked her, and we went back to work on the reservoir. Meanwhile, at coordinates 660.661, the pirate fleet was assembling. 15 ships had already gathered, with everyone except John Jemmy's present. The crew members climbed out of their ships and started socializing, introducing themselves and swapping stories from their travels. One short, ugly Japanese pirate was bragging loudly about how he'd found an island with a lone woman on it yesterday. She had no weapons, so he'd overpowered her easily, seized her island, and was keeping her locked in his control room. The others listened with envy rather than disgust. Nobody expressed any discomfort. They all wished they'd had the same luck. Another pirate complained about finding only an empty 16-square-meter island, obviously abandoned by someone who died on day 1. Useless. Someone else had found a slightly bigger empty island at 100 square meters, equally worthless. Then an Indian pirate named Jindalunda Hujya shared his story. He'd also conquered an occupied island, knocked the owner unconscious, and was using them as furniture in his control room. The others nodded along until he casually mentioned the captive was male. The group went dead silent for a moment, processing that information. Then they looked at him again and collectively thought, he's from that country. Makes sense. The short Japanese pirate, whose name was Badakenii, then invited everyone to come hang out in his control room after the raid for drinks. Several pirates' eyes lit up with obvious interest. They started asking about the woman's appearance and age. Badakenii said looks didn't matter in times like these, and that she appeared to be around 50 years old. The enthusiasm evaporated instantly. One by one, the pirates suddenly remembered they had urgent business to attend to after the raid. Very important island plundering appointments they couldn't possibly miss. Only Jindalunda eagerly accepted the invitation without hesitation. The others silently acknowledged that the Indian pirate truly lived up to his reputation of being completely unselective. Enough chatting, the captain's here, someone announced. Everyone straightened up as a noticeably superior pirate ship glided into view from behind the cluster. It was bigger and better equipped than any of theirs. John had upgraded to a level 2 vessel. John Jimmy's had actually arrived earlier, but deliberately waited to make his entrance last. In his mind, the boss never shows up first. Underlings wait for the boss, not the other way around. It was all about projecting power and status. Everyone's here, he announced, scanning his assembled fleet with satisfaction. Players 666, Your time of death has arrived. The pirate fleet gathered at the rendezvous point, and the crew members scrambled to flatter John the moment his ship appeared. A Thai pirate kicked it off by gushing about how John radiated kingly aura that could be felt from miles away. Everyone else immediately jumped in with their own praise, desperate to outdo each other. Nobody wanted to be the only one not kissing up. John waved them off and got down to business. Someone asked why they'd traveled all this way just for one island. It looked like a level 3 island, decent, but not worth mobilizing the entire fleet. Fair question. John seized the opportunity to lie through his teeth. He told them he'd politely invited me to join the Dark Pirates with a vice captain position, and I'd not only refused but insulted the entire crew. According to his version, I'd called them garbage, clowns who'd never amount to anything, and ants on the side of the road that could be crushed with one hand. He claimed I'd left my coordinates as a taunt, daring them to come get me. None of that was true. I'd simply rejected his friend request and told him where to find me. But his crew didn't know that. They were furious, screaming about how they'd cut me into pieces, chop me into fragments, make me pay for disrespecting them. John was pleased with himself. He'd whipped them into a frenzy on purpose. Now they'd charge in first while he hung back to observe. If anything went wrong, he could quietly turn his ship around and flee while his loyal idiots got slaughtered. He silently congratulated himself on being so clever. Then the short Japanese pirate Badakenii suggested something that made John's eyes light up: a live stream. Broadcast the entire attack on the regional channel for everyone to see. Show the whole world what happened to people who defied the Dark Pirates. Imagine me on my knees, begging for mercy, with thousands watching. It would be the ultimate humiliation and a powerful warning to everyone else. The crew unanimously supported the idea. John hesitated for a second, then agreed. The thought of me publicly groveling was too delicious to pass up. He opened the regional channel and started a live stream titled Dark Pirates Mobilize, live broadcast of the slaughter of Player 666. He tagged me directly in the announcement, calling me a dog and declaring that, "Daddy has come to deal with you." The response was instant. Thousands of viewers flooded into the stream. The chat exploded. Some people were horrified that someone was openly live streaming a murder. Others pointed out that this was a lawless world now and nobody had the power to stop it. People asked who Player 666 was, and others explained I was the water seller. A few bitter voices said I deserved it for charging high prices. Karma coming home, they called it. Others told those people to shut up. The viewer count blew past 1,000 and kept climbing. People who saw the stream were messaging friends about it, and those friends were joining too. It was becoming the biggest spectacle since the survival game began. Under John's command, 16 pirate ships started moving in formation, slowly closing in on my island from all directions to form a siege circle. On my end, Lily spotted the movement immediately. "Master, they're coming," I snapped into action. Faye, grab the fishing rods and hide in my sleeve to stay close to me. Xiao Xiao, go invisible and find a good ambush position. Everyone else, hide yourselves and get ready to strike. Then I added the crucial instruction. When you attack, move as fast as possible and don't let your faces be seen. Player 9999 had messaged me to let me know about the livestream. I'd actually already seen John's announcement on the channel myself, but I appreciated the heads up and thanked them. The livestream changed everything about my approach. Shina, Fei Air, Kai Ning, by Xian Air, Li Li, Xiao Xiao, they were my hidden trump cards. If thousands of people saw them on a broadcast, word would spread instantly. 6 incredibly beautiful, supernaturally powerful women living on one island? Every ambitious warlord, every pirate crew, every desperate loner in the region would start scheming about how to take them from me. Their beauty alone would attract endless trouble. I didn't mind swatting flies when they came buzzing, but I didn't want to spend every day swatting flies either. There was no point inviting trouble by showing off my strength to the entire world. As the saying goes, there are always thieves working around the clock, but nobody can guard against them around the clock. Better to keep my cards hidden and deal with threats quietly. The pirates would die today. Nobody watching the stream needed to know how or why. They just needed to see the result. Let them come. Let the cameras roll. This was about to become the most embarrassing live stream in the history of the Dark Pirates. John's 16 pirate ships surrounded my island in a wide circle. He was putting on a show for the live stream, playing up his role as the terrifying pirate king. Through the broadcast, thousands of viewers got their first look at my island. The level 3 territory, the vegetables, the chickens and ducks, the stone houses, the water wells. The chat immediately turned toxic. People were furious that my island was so developed compared to theirs. He sucked our blood dry selling overpriced water, they screamed. He deserves to be robbed. Some were celebrating my upcoming death, opening imaginary champagne. A few people tried to defend me. Player 9999 called them all jealous losers, but got kicked from the stream. Player 888 said the same thing and got booted too. I sat on the roof of one of my stone houses, watching the fleet close in. John spotted me through his stream and started gloating, asking if I was scared, if I regretted being so arrogant. The person about to die has a lot of unnecessary things to say, I replied calmly. While I talked, I quietly added every single person mocking me in the chat to my blacklist. Every one of them. Future business. John laughed and called me delusional. He kicked his slave Wang Jingxing off the ship, first to check for traps. Wang and 2 other slaves walked onto my island without incident. No traps triggered. No hidden defenses activated. That made John confident. He figured I was all talk, lucky with resources, but stupid when it came to actual combat preparation. No traps, no arrow towers, nothing. Just a fool sitting on a rooftop waiting to die. He stepped off his ship onto my island. His left foot touched the ground. In that same instant, a flash of blade light cut through the air. Before his right foot could even land, John Jimmy's head was separated from his body and rolling across the dirt. He'd spent all that time posturing, speechifying, building dramatic tension for his live stream audience, and then got killed in a fraction of a second without even understanding what happened. His right foot was still hanging in midair when his head hit the ground. The live stream cut off immediately. You can't broadcast from a dead man's account. The remaining pirates stood frozen, their brains unable to process what had just occurred. Their captain, their invincible pirate king, had been decapitated by something they couldn't even see. 1 second, he was strutting onto the island with a triumphant grin. The next second, his body was collapsing headless onto the ground. After a few seconds of paralyzed silence, someone finally screamed, "There's something terrifying on this island. Run!" That broke the spell. Everyone scrambled in every direction, fighting each other to get back to their ships. Some tried to surrender mid-sprint. "I'm willing to surrender." One never finished the word. His head was gone before the last syllable left his mouth. Another managed to say, "I surrender," completely. It didn't matter. Then a heartbeat later. In under 3 seconds, every single pirate who had set foot on my island was dead. All of them. 19 people wiped out so fast that most of them died without ever seeing what killed them. Lily straightened her dress and casually wiped the blood off her dagger. This week, and they dared come looking for trouble with Master. She actually looked offended by how easy it had been. She'd expected at least a challenge. Instead, she got target practice. "Throw the bodies off the edge," I told the girls. "After that, come with me to search their ships." There might be people still on board. With John dead and the livestream killed, every viewer got dumped back to the regional channel. The chat absolutely exploded. People were losing their minds trying to figure out what happened. One person said they saw a flash of light, and then John's head was on the ground. Someone confirmed that within 3 seconds of John's death, every member of the raiding party also died. Their names and portraits in the Dark Pirates roster all went gray simultaneously. Someone else verified it, noting the kills were clearly instantaneous. Player 309 posted a pointed message aimed at everyone who'd been trash-talking me. "Certain idiots should watch their mouths from now on." Player 666 clearly has something that can kill instantly. The tone of the entire channel shifted overnight. All the people who'd been openly mocking me, calling me greedy, demanding I share my resources for free, they went silent. Not just quiet. They switched from real names to anonymous IDs. Every single one of them. Nobody wanted to be identifiable anymore. Meanwhile, my friend request list was suddenly flooded with messages from women. Some were desperate. Some were strategic. All of them were offering themselves as companions in exchange for protection. The messages came with photos, flattering words, promises of obedience. Their logic was simple. If they could attach themselves to someone powerful enough to instantly kill 19 pirates, they'd never need to worry about survival again. When I boarded one of the pirate ships to search it, A middle-aged woman came crawling out of the control room and threw herself at my feet. She was slamming her forehead against the deck, begging for her life, offering to be my slave forever. She'd been watching everything through the control room window. She'd seen it all. The cat girl, the snake woman, the elf, the fox girl, the mermaid, the ghost. Creatures she'd never imagined could exist in any world, moving at speeds her eyes could barely follow, cutting down armed pirates like they were nothing. She was absolutely terrified. But more than that, she was smart enough to know that surrendering immediately was her only chance at survival.